Very special edition of Legendary Sickos, a Legendary Upside and Spike Week crossover show where today we're bringing on even more smart people that I'm going to pick their brains as well. How can we use Dynasty and the way we think about Dynasty fantasy football to draft better best ball teams? Myself, Pat Crane, Davis Mattek, and maybe Jacob Sanderson will get you covered there. Let's do it. All right, guys, here we are. The season is almost here. We were talking quickly before the show started. I don't know how you guys are feeling. Starting to feel like we're running on fumes. I'm very much ready for week one. I start dabbling with some DFS lineups, and that's when I know I've got the itch and I'm kind of ready to be done with draft season. But I got a lot more teams to draft, and I do think as like Dynasty season heats up, you guys are talking about this all summer, and I of course listened to all those episodes of Legendary Upside. But it does feel like right now is kind of a good time where everybody's doing their Dynasty drafts, or at least like the broader community is. I just did one yesterday, and it's a kind of a great time to take advantage of some of that stuff. Like the young guys, we have a little bit clearer idea of who's even like going to make teams, maybe who are the backup running backs in situations, et cetera, et cetera. So we felt like it's a good time to do a little special crossover, how we can use Dynasty in best ball. But of course, first of all, Davis, How's everything going? Are you ready for the season?
I'm on the clock in like 180 slow drafts right now. I am, as we are speaking, adjusting my drafters ranking so that I can start auto drafting some drafters. And I just am. It's you're in that point of the season where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you just tell yourself like, dude, next 2 weeks are gonna suck. I'm not going to lie to you. You look yourself in the mirror and you say you're in for a bad time. But 3 weeks from now, when you're looking at stuff and the 18th round guy that you really like scores a touchdown in week one, and you can be like, I've got Michael Wilson on 31% of 840 teams. That's when it is all worth it. So we're feeling good, man. We're feeling good.
Yeah.
That is.
Hey, you guys want to plan
true.
a move to San Diego the end of this month? Does that sound like something that you should add to? Yeah, because that's what I'm doing. Super smart.
Seems super ideal. Yeah.
I'm smart and someone you should listen to. It's going to be a hell of a month for me. I've got a ton of drafts that I'm also trying to get done. DraftKings is where I'm going to be spending a lot of my time. I feel really good for where I'm at on Underdog. I've been able to do some of the higher stake stuff slow. I'm on pace with BBM. I'm actually like a little bit ahead of the fill rate there, so I feel fine about that. But man, DraftKings, I'm only about a third of the way done through the $10, third of the way done through the $44. I've got my 555s on schedule. I'm obviously not maxing that, but I'm on schedule of what I wanted to do.
Why not? Are you a coward?
I am a coward. Yeah,
Didn't your accountant tell you to get as much down as you possibly could?
That is the most top-heavy week 17 thing where it's like you either like it's very binary. Like either I'm super glad I maxed it because I won $1 million, or I'm absolutely shattered that I maxed it, and I just don't.
It's just money you don't owe to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, I get half off basically, but I still do lose it. Like if I put $2 million in play this year and I lose all the money, like I it sucks for me.
you couldn't get down $2 million in best ball if you wanted to, unless you were CSU.
Would you guys be maxing the 555 in my shoes?
I'd be maxing everything. I'd be paying people to draft for me. Like I would be maxing all the contests there were to. Because also
I'm maxing a lot of stuff. That one was not.
Best ball is going to be harder next year than it is this year, and it's going to be harder 2 years from now. Like we're in a good sweet spot of the game still being of people still drafting. Najee Harris in the 4th round.
Yeah, big time. I will say the problem that you have is the high stakes tournaments. Quite frankly, almost everywhere are pretty shitty structures that I don't really love.
Really like the Mastiff, which is like a cash game, or the 555, which is like just silly top heavy in the final week. No one cares about this, but me. But
it's okay. We're all venting our lamenting all the teams that we have to draft here, and I'm almost done with BBM. I'm almost done with underdog. It wasn't even really a plan that way, but we're trying to take advantage of all these fishies over in the DraftKings land. So I actually feel pretty good about where I'm at in terms of like you said, the sites I have to draft on. I got a ton to do on Drafters and a ton to do on DraftKings, but I feel like if I had to do that over again, I would probably still do the same thing. I know like the BBM rooms are softer now than they were in May and June and whatever when we were drafting.
They're not easy though.
But it's not, I don't think it's that different. Like you will show up and 1 out of 3 times, there's 2 guys that go in the first round on DraftKings and you're just like, oh, baby, like you're going to get like Tyreek Hill at the 111, like not a totally small number of times on DraftKings. On Underdog, like the soft room is like 1 or 2 fallers. And so I feel pretty good about that approach. Like we've talked about the barbell and all that kind of different stuff that has evolved as the game has changed and we have a billion different tournaments to play. But I do feel pretty good about like if you're trying to attack certain sites at certain times, there are different, within the time limitations that we have. I kind of like, and if you're going to auto draft, right? Like Drafters, Davis is like, I don't even have time to sit in all these drafts. That's the one site where you can do it and you're not like completely punting off that money. So I feel good about all that.
I mean, that's you just hit on the thing, which is that sure, if I could draft 150 Best Ball Mania teams like right now, when the rooms are a little bit softer and ADP is a little bit more crystallized, like maybe I would, but just time management, I can't do that.
I don't know. I mean, there's stuff like I had a bunch of Khalil Herbert early and I don't know, in the 11th, 12th round or something like that. And I didn't feel good about it for a minute. And now I feel good about it. And there's lots of stuff like that where I need to like go review. And if I have time, which I probably won't, but if I'm watching football in week 1 and I want to start looking at some of these teams and just like kind of see what I have more for just like roster baiting purposes, then, it's going to be funner to look at those early teams and see what kind of values got paired up. Obviously, you're going to have, if you're me, a fair amount of third round Brees that won't look as fun from a value perspective. But there's going to be, I think, lots of good values and fun kind of textures of teams that were impossible to get later. So I don't know. I like drafting all the way through the summer. I think like you're basically whenever you're drafting is going to have some advantages.
It's just fun. It's just fun to draft.
It is fun.
And you get different textures, right? So I just did a BBM draft with Pete on Friday on Best Ball After Dark, and we took a bunch of guys like ahead of where their ADP goes right now. We did the Lamar and Andrews at the 2-3 turn with Justin Jefferson because we just wanted to build that, and then we actually reached on 2 guys who we reached on them in general, but have risen a ton at the 4-5 turn. Deontay Johnson and JSN. And people were like, oh man, those are big reaches. How do you figure that out? Well, like drafts right now are just different. Like we ended up getting, I believe it was both Bateman and Treylon Burks fell to, way past ADP and came back to us. It was like, well, really, if we just like flipped a couple of guys around.
So the 10-11 must be what you're saying, right?
Yeah, they felt. Wow. This was shortly after the Burks injury, and Bateman is back falling again, which I can't really figure out why. But anyway, right? Some of the texture, and then we take some different late round guys. Like I just have new 17th and 18th round guys that I wasn't taking before. I didn't realize were a thing, right? Jalen Warren moves up, but Damian Harris plummets. Tank Bigsby moves up, but Kendre Miller plummets, and we find out Kendre's totally fine. That was kind of bizarre last night. But just like the text, I think we worry too much about all that different stuff when like this isn't DFS. You're not going to like have dupes. Like you're not going to have to worry about that. When you're in that room, you can do some funky little things, right? And you don't have to draft Darrell Henderson when he moves from the 12th to the 4th. That's a very different conversation. But like, just because Jalen Warren was going in the 150s and he's going in the 120s right now, like, I don't really think that means you have to avoid those guys.
Much. Yeah. Especially because it's like, it's happening. Like, if there is and it's not like he's rocketing up.
But he ain't going backwards. Like him and
going backwards.
If you want to take them, tough shit. This is the new price. Like if you want to take a stand against guys, whatever. But like, guess what? You ain't getting cheaper, Jalen Warren, at any point the rest of the summer.
No.
So
or Herbert, right? There's a number of these guys where it's like Waller. I've made my peace with. I'll see you later.
Yep.
It was nice. We didn't hang out all that often in July, but there were some hangs. But now we've moved on with our lives. You're going to be in the 5th round, and I'm going to be doing other things. So.
But to Davis's point, I do think also, it's fun, like you mentioned, just drafting and stuff. But there is, right, you want to enjoy the experience not only of the drafting, but there is something about we're doing all this. We have a mental illness for 6 months drafting like literally more than 1,000 best ball teams because, like you said, when week 1 hits and Michael Wilson scores a touchdown, right? Or when I get to watch Sam Howell throw for 304 and, just I won't even tag Pat. I'll just totally subtweet him or something like that to get my rocks off on.
I'm excited for early season Sam Howell. I mean, I'm in. I think that's gonna be great.
We don't need to talk about the nuance of why you actually dislike him and what by week 14 when Brissett's starting. We can forget about all that. But
week 17 dunks will not. Don't do that. Don't tag me. Subtweet me there. I'm gonna be sad. So don't rub it in.
But to kind of what we were going to talk about here, I feel like this part of the summer is when this dynasty mindset and when I really start thinking about a lot of these young guys for my dynasty drafts. Everybody in our little bubble loves the Stealing Bananas episodes where Sean and Ben forecast the first 2 rounds of next season. I think this is kind of piggybacking on that kind of a thought experiment. And I really do think it's like heading in now, I'm viewing things a little bit differently. And it's not even like I'm forcing myself to think about it from a dynasty perspective. I think it naturally starts to happen when you start to see some of these young guys play. You start to get news on some of these younger guys, particularly like later in drafts. And every time I watch JSN on the football field, I'm convinced he's just literally going to be a star from day one. All this different stuff starts to really kind of rise to the top. I feel like at this point in the summer. And this is when I feel like we can start to take some of those stands on those dynasty guys, because in April, May, whatever, you just don't really know, about rookie. Like, are you getting Justin Jefferson or are you getting David Bell? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Are you getting Garrett Wilson or are you getting Jalen Tolbert? In May, I don't really know, but now we do start to know. And so that's when I really like to sink my teeth into some of those dynasty type guys and think about it from that lens. Not to not do it in May, but you have a lot more information to act on now, I think, in August and September.
I mean, there are a lot of cases of this, especially because a lot of these guys, the dynasty consensus impacts them more than the training camp reports and what's going on with Michael Wilson is the best example of this. Where Michael Wilson, starting out in rookie training camp, looked like he was going to be a starter, basically came in right away. They drafted him way over, what his ADP would have been in the NFL, where he was projected to go. And he was really the only big bodied wide receiver, but he really wasn't a good prospect. Crane, I think he went undrafted in one of our rookie leagues, one of our dynasty leagues that we were in together. But now I'm I can't wait to take Michael Wilson, because every NFL thing that happens to these guys, their prospect profile matters way less. And that's totally happening for Michael Wilson, where the dynasty perspective on him actually kept you from drafting sort of a clear value.
Well, what I would say with the dynasty thing is that we do want to, in dynasty, I think, pay a lot of attention to the prospect profiles and the talent, because dynasty provides you with a larger sample size, right? Where if you're drafting a rookie, I talk about trade value a lot and how trade value is important, but getting trades to be accepted or accepting a good trade can take some work. And so it's not like you're literally trading every player on your team every year in dynasty. A number of these players are going to hold for a couple years. That's just the way things are. And if you're drafting a player and you may have them on your team for 2 or 3 seasons, then how good they are really matters. And it matters less, frankly, how good they are in best ball. In best ball, we're talking about a single season, and we're talking about maybe a single week for some of these best ball mania type tournaments, these playoff best ball tournaments. And so we don't want to get as hung up on the talent profile there. Guys like Michael Floyd and Kendall Wright come to mind as guys who were not successful NFL draft picks, really. They were both first-round real-life picks and basically washed out of the league after their rookie contracts. but both had pretty successful rookie years. I believe they both went for over 1,000 yards as rookies. So
Kendall Wright went nuts, didn't he? Kendall Wright caught 100 balls or something like that.
Yeah, because and that's draft capital at work, right? So that's like, and I think through a guy like Zay Flowers, I don't think Zay Flowers had a very good prospect profile from a dynasty perspective. He's an older prospect. He kind of dominated at this not great program. He's undersized. He can probably separate pretty well in the intermediate area, but what's his ceiling? Is it really worth where he's going in dynasty? But can Zay Flowers pay off ahead of, Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman's banged up, never played. He's never been a full-time player even. The Ravens take a step forward, pass more. And can he pay off like a late 7th round, early 8th round ADP? Yes, he can. That's not a position that I want to be in dynasty. I will take a bigger stance. I'm going to bet on the talent-based profile. What I think this guy is. You don't want to be too dogmatic about that either, but you want to be less dogmatic when you get into these best ball drafts. You've already got Lamar. It's I've drafted a ton of Bateman. It's I'm really not going to draft this first round receiver who's having a good camp because I don't think he's going to be awesome in 2025. That's stupid. So I think you don't want to let the dynasty thing influence it too much, but I think at the same time, it's helpful to have those guys in your mind of if you played dynasty for a while, you do remember these guys who have good rookie years as first round picks, don't really develop into much, but what is the price asking you for? And Zay Flowers would be an example of a guy where if he turns out to be Kendall Wright, the full version of Kendall Wright, the whole career, I think you're pretty happy you took him in the 7th round.
For sure.
Looking up, sorry, I just wanted to so his rookie year, Kendall Wright, he did have 104 targets, which is even more than I would have thought. He went 64 for 626 yards and 4 touchdowns. His sophomore season, he had 139 targets, caught 94 balls for just shy of 1,100 yards. Kendall Wright.
Okay, so I don't know how many year I was thinking of. Okay,
but I don't know how many people would. But I mean, that's I'm trying to think of somebody who that's George Pickens or right. I mean, I'm not comparing Kendall Wright as a prospect to George Pickens, but the second year guy was okay, was fine as a rookie or whatever. Say whatever you want about him as a talent, and then who the fuck else is going to catch the ball, right? Tennessee, they don't have anybody else that can be someone. And like you said, you look back and the guy didn't play past 2017. He was out of the league in 2018. And in 2013, he almost caught 100 passes in a season. So that's a really perfect example of what you're talking about. Sorry, Davis.
The best example is Eddie Royal, 2008 rookie year.
That's the best one. Yeah.
129 targets, 91 receptions, 980 yards. He played in the NFL until he was 30, never earned more targets, never earned more receptions, never had more yards, never scored more touchdowns than that year for the Denver Broncos when he was a rookie, where it's it doesn't matter. And I'm not super well versed in my 2008 Denver Broncos, but my guess would be that year there would have been a reason to take him in fantasy with sort of our brains now and how we are able to interpret these results.
Brandon Marshall Brandon Marshall was the wide receiver 1 on that team, and then Brandon Stokely in the slot, and Eddie Royal on the outside on the other one. So like you said, that's Zay or something, right?
Yes.
That is very much like a Zay Flowers.
Yeah, Michael Floyd was also actually his second year that had the 1,000 yards, but decent production as a rookie as well. And obviously if Flowers goes down as a long-term bust, that's not ideal. But also lots of guys have surprised their prospect, based on what at least I thought they would be from their prospect profile, have surprised me. That happens all the time in Dynasty, and your hit rate is not going to be perfect. We're digging into these prospect profiles and comparing them to previous players, and using thresholds and analytical stuff and looking at film or whatever, reading scouting reports, and you're going to get better. You're going to have a better hit rate than if you didn't do any of that stuff. But at the same time, you are going to miss. And so I do think that there's certain guys where I will ultimately be more okay taking them in best ball than I am in Dynasty. And Flowers is really he kind of checks those boxes for me, where it's I want to bet on the Ravens this year. This looks like a really good year, price adjusted, in my opinion, to bet on the Ravens, because there's this thing that's hard to price. Like, how much will Todd Monken affect the offense? Will they pass a lot more? Lamar's not been healthy the last couple of years. The market doesn't like that. I'm pretty bullish on the Monken effect, partially because like they've been, I mean, just natural regression from the last few years would help you. So then Monken could be a boost above that, and then Lamar. You know, I'm pretty much always willing to bet on stars to stay healthy if the market says they're not going to be, you know, the past injuries are going to be a problem. And he's signed to a new contract. They brought in weapons. Like, the Ravens are just a team that I'm bullish on this year. And then you give me a first round rookie, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'll take some bets on that guy, even if I don't think he has the best prospect profile. You know, Dotson would be a guy last year where I was like,
Dotson is a really good example.
Yep,
yeah.
That's exactly who I was thinking of from last year.
Yep. So what if he's Dotson on the Ravens? That could be really fun.
Pretty good.
Dotson, I think, is probably a worse prospect than Flowers.
And I think Dotson might just also be better than I thought he was coming into the league as well. So like, you got all these different avenues to win on those players, right? Like, and Washington, that was Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke, and you won with this dude. And partially it's because he's probably better than we thought he was going to be, but also just because like, I think why this conversation is so important, and I want to talk about like some older dudes and stuff too, because the market does love the youth nowadays, generally from a macro sense. But you're just getting prices on guys that, whether it's uncertainty or overconfidence, can be the other thing, right? Like the Broncos, we were all really friggin' overconfident that the Broncos were going to be something awesome last year. But like, if we just think about it like through this dynasty lens, right? Like Zay Flowers makes sense, but if you think about it, you know, from like the best ball dynasty lens, right? Not like the Pat's example of Eddie, you know, Kendall Wright and Eddie Royal or whatever. But like, if you just kind of take a step back and think about it, like, yeah, I like the Ravens. They drafted this dude in the first round. I can win with this guy like a lot of ways in best ball, like a lot of ways in best ball. And it's like almost that simple. Like, to me, like, how hard is it to win with Najee Harris in the late third? To me, pretty hard. How hard is it to win with 8th round Zay Flowers? Not really that hard to me. You know what I mean? It's not that hard. So it's kind of like the dynasty lens makes that kind of nuance more apparent to me, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah. And I also think you have the effect with the rookies specifically of they're most likely to produce at the end of the year. Like Jack Miller's done some good work on this. Michael Dubner's put together some charts on this that show that you can actually see, you know, that the points per game for rookies go up over the course of the year, and they go down for veterans. And so, again, just obviously, like, you think about like what's happening in the real world, it's like these teams are checking out their rookies. It's the end of the year. They're seeing what they got. Even if rookies end up sucking, right, they can still contribute to the top finishing teams in these tournaments. For example, I had Tyquan Thornton last year. He is now like the wide receiver 5 on the Patriots, but he was getting a look at the end of the year. KJ Hamler was on Herzig's winning team. Right, he didn't contribute in week 17. He contributed a spike week leading up to that, but he mattered for that team. Amon-Ra St. Brown was on Liam's. Obviously, he's a legit player. But like, you can have busts. You can have rookie busts on these teams if you are at least getting them cheap enough. And that's like where a guy like Michael Wilson would come in for me, where I'm like, Michael Wilson, he flashed actually a little bit over a 5-year college career. He never had like a breakout season really, but he did flash a couple times with production, and he's athletic. And he's clearly a starting wide receiver, not just in 3 wide receiver sets, but in 2 wide receiver sets. He is a starter. He looks like he's going to start the entire season if he stays healthy. And then at the end of the year, you know, maybe they're actually like featuring him to see if they can get, well, we haven't gotten as much out of this guy as we thought. Let's see if we dial up some first reads for him, get him the ball, let's try him out on screens. Let's see what he can do. Even if their conclusion is that he sucks ass, like, he still might win you something.
Yep.
So I did think, like, what's the price asking? What is the price saying I need? And the price on Michael Wilson's like, be bad but get used enough in the right weeks. That would be fine.
You know who he feels a little bit like? Again, not necessarily prospect profile, but just in terms of everything you're kind of outlining there. It's like, remember Chase Claypool as a rookie?
Yes.
And you're outlining this like sometimes it's all about the opportunity. And Chase Claypool is athletic. He's probably not very good at football, but we saw the athleticism, right? Big, strong, fast is what he was. But kind of looks like Tarzan plays like Jane is what we've learned about Chase Claypool, I think. But dude, rookie season didn't matter. Double-digit touchdowns because you're out there, you're athletic. They didn't really have anybody else, right? I think that was Juju when Juju started the descent into what he is now, right? And they just didn't have much, and they had the corpse of Big Ben, and they really weren't that good of a team, And so I don't see why that can't be Michael Wilson.
It's a classic thing where Claypool had 873 yards as a rookie, scores 9 touchdowns, and it's awesome. Then the following year, his 860 yards, only scores 2 touchdowns, and
scored 11 touchdowns. You're not counting the rushing ones?
Yeah, the rushing.
Oh, he scored 11 touchdowns. Oh, my bad. I shorted him. Okay, so 11 touchdowns as a rookie. So obviously that's a huge difference, 11-2. But touchdowns are somewhat, they're very high variance. But the other thing is that the price changed a ton. So it's like from free you get 11 touchdowns versus you're paying for it and you don't get the touchdowns. It really hurts. But Claypool's a great one. Where Claypool's a bust. He's a bust now, I think we can say, and he still was a huge impact player as a rookie.
Hey, I mean, he might not be a bust. It might be fine.
He's probably a bust.
I'm willing to give him this year. But I don't have a lot of confidence that he's everywhere. You don't do what he did as a rookie and then fall out of favor that badly. I understand, Mike Tomlin can be a little boomer-esque, whatever. But they tolerated Antonio Brown and Big Ben and Le'Veon Bell for a long time, and they couldn't tolerate this dude. They had to ship him out, And granted, they got a 2nd-round pick. I would have shipped him out too. But I don't know. And now he's in Chicago.
They might love him.
And
they might love him, and they shipped him out for that 2nd-round pick. I mean, that was amazing.
Yes, the Bears kind of gifted him that one. But I don't have a lot of confidence in Chase Claypool. But that one of my guys who, from this dynasty lens, has me interested in this same thought process as not quite as Michael Wilson, because I don't think he's going to be starting day one, may never start, but it's like Tyler Scott, right? So you think about that, and from a dynasty lens, the draft capital was okay. I think he was kind of a fun prospect, not anything amazing, but he is an absolute burner. Probably already one of the fastest dudes in the NFL. He's certainly going to make the team. So, if you have dead roster spot issues, you don't have that with someone like Tyler Scott. And the guys holding him up are this Chase Claypool, who we are pretty sure sucks, and Darnell Mooney, who we're pretty sure is kind of just a guy, whatever, right? And so you think about that, you're like, Zay Flowers is probably never going to be right. He's never going to be that home run, most likely. He's never going to be Odell Beckham or Jamar Chase or somebody like that. I'm not saying Tyler Scott is either, but again, in a best ball lens, I don't know, this young guy with decent draft capital with nothing really in front of him. You want to talk about free? At least Michael Wilson gets drafted occasionally. There are, whether you like Tyler Scott or not, there are tons of those guys out there, across all positions that just don't get drafted. And there's probably reason to believe, probably because in Dynasty, people are scooping Tyler Scott in Dynasty leagues, but best ball, it's no, got to give me the veterans right in the 18th round. And I don't know that that's necessarily always right.
No, I prefer to go with, I'm probably more less risk averse with those 8. I'm fine eating some zeros. I know there's been a lot of research on not doing that, but I mean, Tutu is my 18th round guy right now, but Deontay Hardy is another one. We talked.
I don't think you're risking zeros there. I mean, he's going to be a special teams player. He'll be out there.
Yeah, good for him.
Just need those return touchdown points.
I mean, it feels like the obvious one that we're missing talking about these rookies though is Bijan Robinson. I mean, Bijan Robinson, I think there's a pretty good argument he ends up being the highest scoring player in fantasy. I see it pretty clearly. He's so good. The offense is so efficient at running. All you really have to do is squint and give him 60 receptions instead of 40. And it's pretty there.
Yeah, I'm working on the legendary running back article right now, which is going to be completely free at legendaryupside.com. So sign up. And it's kind of nuts how hard it is to not give him over 300 carries. But I'm just I
don't know how you'd have to put him in a 50-50 timeshare with Algier and Patterson, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, so we're starting there, and then he's a good receiving prospect. So I mean, I don't think we have to stop at 60, frankly. Like I think we could be like getting up into the 70s or even like the 80.
I'm just giving the
receptions.
slappies who don't like him like a little bit of credit. That's all.
Yeah, but his legendary season was, as I like go through, you know, I've tried to like envision what the legendary outcome looks like for these guys, and the harder one with him is figuring out how to make it suck. Because I also go through and I do like he stays healthy, but he's a silent killer, or what does that look like? I'm like, in his silent killer scenarios, he has 272 carries.
Yeah,
I'm like this. It's very difficult. And then, you know, you're looking at him from a dynasty perspective, comparing him to guys like Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, and like he looks every bit the prospect of those guys to me. Like, and I think he was a better prospect than Zeke. I think Zeke's one of the more overrated prospects of the last few years. But he's, you know, I think firmly a better prospect than Zeke. He's really, to me, Saquon was kind of the top level prospect, and I think at this point, Bijan looks like a better prospect than Zeke, although
he's better
at that point
with the ball in his hands than anyone I think I've ever seen in my life. Like, so Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb are that in the like, you just can't tackle me, like physicality type of a way. Bijan is that in it. Like, did you? Yeah, I'm sure you guys watched, you know, the first game that he got to play. The little like, it wasn't a jump cut. He does shit that people don't.
Yeah, I
do.
don't know
Like
what
normally,
it's a teleportation.
yeah, normally you would jump cut that, right? The runner gets in the hole, you got the safety screaming down, you have to jump cut to like Brees was wowing people doing that with like jump cuts in the hole and stuff like that because he's really shifty like that, you know, in a phone booth or whatever. Bijan does it, and you're like, you have to keep rewinding, like, how did his body move like that when he's going forward at full speed? And he just like he did it every game at Texas. Like he was in a borderline timeshare with Roschon Johnson and like just crushed every single game. Was not tackleable. I did projections for them and did everything I could to make him look shitty and give Algier a bunch of stuff because I wanted to be like not biased and me thinking that he's a superstar or whatever. And like you said, he still comes out like as one of the top running backs in fantasy, giving him like 55% of the work in this backfield because there's so much work. He's so good and the offense is so efficient. It's like I don't know how to lose with him other than injury, you know, type of a thing. And I can see losing with Eckler in a lot of ways that don't involve injury, right? Same thing with Saquon or whatever. I can see losing with those guys. Bijan is in kind of that CMC category that like, I don't know, man. They just got to get hurt. Like that's the only way I can see it.
Yeah, and I think Dynasty helps with that too because, you know, I've built teams that were, you know, like coming off a championship, and you put together a couple of veteran running backs to run it back, and it just falls apart in such a disastrous way, and you're like, what have I done? So I think like Dynasty really helps you understanding floor and ceiling cases where like Bijan is, you know, he seems like, now generally we don't get legendary seasons from rookie running backs. Saquon's the only one since 2000. But the guy looks exactly like Saquon, and they're about to use the shit out of him. So I think he does strike me. Maybe we're a year early on Bijan, but
Doug Martin wasn't a legendary season, 2,000 yards,
I don't
12
think so.
touchdowns.
I think he came just short. I used a pretty high threshold for it, 23.
Well, if Zeke didn't even get there, it's a high threshold for sure. By the way, guys, I'm super sorry. The 2 weeks in Ireland made me completely forget how time zones work.
Yeah, I was gonna say I knew
2:30 Eastern time was 12:30 Pacific time, and it's 11:30 Pacific time. So I was like, I logged in and I was like, I'm gonna go into the StreamYard 15 minutes early, and then I saw a bunch of messages, and then I did the quick little -3, and I was like, fuck, yeah, that's that one up.
Far be it from me to correct someone's time zones.
Yeah, sorry, Jacob. You came in during a Bijan Rob, so you're coming in at the right time to talk about. But I am actually interested in you guys take generally about Bijan because I think we just like plopped him in somewhere in the first round where like people don't want to take him in front of Eckler because Eckler was the RB1 last year, right?
If I was a real man, I would take him ahead of Eckler. I don't think I quite have the. I might do it in a main event honestly. Like if I like just because I want to, I'll only do like 5
I just had to
of
talk
those.
the guys into the main event into Bijan. We had the choice between Bijan and Garrett Wilson, and I was like,
Literally
Bijan.
get out of my
okay.
face. Yeah.
I
come
thank
on.
you, man. I was like, literally, you know what happened?
We've jumped the shark.
I was just gonna say with the Garrett.
See, I have
we
Garrett
all
Wilson
love-
ranked higher, but maybe I should change that.
You know what
over
happened is we
Bijan.
took Bijan and then we got Garrett Wilson anyway. Which is
Anyway.
why you take
Yeah.
Bijan.
Yeah.
Okay, there
Yeah.
you go. I guess I think it's just the structural thing because like I've been really, I think I need to rethink how I've been doing the first round because I've been just like I'm gonna be like 4% or less on all the 3 first-round running backs because I just like all the later running backs so much more. The wide receivers die at like the middle of the second round, and so Bijan will just like kind of get sacrificed in the crew. But now I've found myself getting more Eckler because it started off as like I was like at 0% Eckler, and then when I'd get to the 109 and I like Bijan more, but Eckler would be there, and I'm like, I never get Eckler. I'll just take Eckler. But now I've like done that so many times that I think I actually have more Eckler than Bijan. So I think I've like gal-brained myself into it. Yeah, the Wilson thing, like the Wilson versus Bijan stuff, it's funny because I had that exact issue in one of the, what is it called now? It used to be the football guys, whatever the $350 tournament is in the FFPC. Fantasy Pros. There we go. Yeah, I had that decision at the 109 where I was like wide receiver or Bijan. And then I took the wide receiver. And then I only got one running back to fall to me in the 3-4 that I liked. And I was like, well, no, I wish I just had Bijan Robinson because like Jamal Williams is my RB2. So I think I need to start forcing the issue more with Bijan for sure.
Yeah, you level yourself when you don't just take Bijan because you'll still get a wide receiver you like in the second round on that turn
but
pick.
Then you'll never get another wide receiver you like. Then you only get the one wide receiver.
No, in the fifth round, if you're playing the main event, you're gonna like who you get in the fifth.
Yeah, I guarantee it. I guarantee you're gonna like whoever you.
JSN.
Okay.
The
well, I like but that's like the only. I guess you can get Addison later. Like that's been the one difference in the main for sure. I think Bijan works better in that format. Like I'm only doing 2 mains and they're both in Vegas, but I've been doing the 350s, and I still don't love the wide receivers in that range. But I guess I don't know. Maybe you guys like them more. I like JSN, but I'm not like a big Godwin person.
No,
so that doesn't excite me.
Not into Godwin.
I like Deontay Johnson, but he doesn't excite me.
One secret hack, just while we're talking the main event, is take a second tight end you like, and then if you're really feeling gross, you can be like, yeah, well, but then I can just start Luke Musgrave and flex, and like he'll get, like that is like a very secret hack about.
That's
about
the
doing
starring
the
the
week
week 17 of the main event. That's the starring week 17.
I've drafted some pretty boomer main event teams in my day because it is a format. Like obviously the ideal. It used to be more possible when we all started doing them. Like when I started doing them 5 years ago, it was more possible to just take 7 insane, like Sean's whole thing. Like, oh, I want 6 wide receivers, all who can be in the top 15. It's just really hard to do that now. One, because the high end wide receivers have separated themselves so much, but also because the rooms are less stubborn. You don't have, I don't know, Dameon Pierce 5 years ago would have been a 3rd round pick in the FFPC main event.
Yeah.
But they're just not doing that now.
Agree. I mean, the piece that I was writing while you guys were recording, and I didn't know what time it was, is literally called "The Dead Zone Running Backs of Fantasy's Information Age," which is basically just all about like the way that we've entirely changed these running backs. And I'm gonna go deep into 4 guys like Ken Walker, J.K. Dobbins, Travis Etienne, and Najee Harris, and comparing and contrasting like the reasons why each of them are faded and why some of those reasons are better than other reasons. But sort of this culmination of how fantasy content has changed and how it's affected the different player archetypes. And certainly come in for some of that of a dynasty lens. I came on half an hour late and then derailed your show from whatever you're talking about. So deepest apologies.
We're just vibing.
If you ever listen to Pat and I, there is no derailment. It just rambles on for about 2.5 hours usually, and
so it kind of just stops.
It just eventually we just hit the end recording button of it.
When we warn you, we don't stop. When we say that we're winding up, we don't stop. Then
to wrap here, I just want to add one thing on like the Bijan thing I actually have very little Bijan like in Best Ball Mania, which I do think this is also an important, like you mentioned, like understanding the draft landscape, like understanding who you like later, understanding all that, understanding your competition and everything. I haven't done any main events. I am going to do a couple. So I don't have like a strong take there, but I would compare it a little bit to like underdog versus DraftKings. And so people would say, well, the scoring is very clearly much better for the wide receivers on DraftKings, right? And Christian McCaffrey probably. Bijan, we'll see, and those early running backs we'll see. But you are being gifted wide receivers later in draft. Like you can take a bunch of detours on DraftKings and still get like Rashad Bateman as your wide receiver 6 or 7 or so. Like it's absolutely insane. So I'm like, I know I'm going to get good wide receivers on this team no matter what I do. Like I'll take Bijan and Tony Pollard, and I still get, really good wide receivers, and I might get an elite tight end or, and so just knowing to me, I always try to like make sure and call out DraftKings, because even though I would naturally rather draft wide receivers there, I end up getting more Bijan, Pollard, Saquon, those guys on there, because the room is just going to give me a loaded wide receiver room no matter what I do.
Totally agree with you. Like the 3 guys that I draft way more on DraftKings that aren't really necessarily format fits are Bijan, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, because they're all the guys that go in rounds where I feel like I need a receiver on underdog, but on DraftKings you get an extra freebie detour for sure.
Right. If we were going to go and draft like against the softest home league in North America, someone had picked that out. Right, we're coming in. We're like full blown ringers here. We're the shark. We come in. I would take a running back earlier than I normally would, right? Because I'm like, I take Bijan because Bijan's gonna be Bijan, and then I can go just like beat the room constantly with value. But like, what can't you do? It's gonna be harder to find a guy who's like the best running back prospect maybe ever, who's gonna get fed work right away. Like that profile isn't just available undercover.
There's not really an arbitrage Bijan play.
No,
right.
No.
It's like Bijan is a great example, but like I think I've drafted Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews in my home league like every single year, because I just have such little respect for my compatriots that I'm just like, I really could just like the Phil tight end here right off the top, and then like we'll get our wide receivers.
Yeah, exactly. What can't you arbitrage? And that would be another great example of you can't really arbitrage Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce if they're healthy and doing what we think they're going to do.
Yeah.
I completely agree with on DraftKings. Like for one, somehow like J.K. Dobbins goes even later. Travis Etienne goes super late he goes like the end of the 4th on DraftKings. So you can get these guys even later. And then I also I think I can get better values, so I can be a little looser. But on underdog, I've had to play it a little tighter, and I end up with less.
Also hope you're not trying to.
I have not been playing it loosely with J.K. Dobbins on underdog, but
I should have
been. I don't know.
I'm overweight on underdog now after not getting a ton early on. So
I don't think you're Jacob overweight. I'm at 23%. So
no, I'm only at 11%, but it's all the cheap stuff.
Is that even more than you, Erik? Because I know you like Dobbins a lot.
I haven't updated my like draft IQ and everything, and I've mostly been on DraftKings. I will make a pretty much a stone guarantee I have more than 23% J.K. Dobbins on DraftKings, because when I first started drafting on DraftKings, which was really only a couple of weeks ago, his ADP was 86 or something like that. And it was like, okay, I'm literally drafting on here to draft J.K. Like that's why I'm here, is to take advantage. So that's cheating a little bit. Now he's risen. He's still way underpriced for me, but now Brees is readily available in the 5th round.
I'm drafting on DraftKings right now to get Brees Hall. That's what's happening.
I can't get him in the 5th because I take him in the 4th. It's a real problem.
You're the only reason his ADP is not like 55.
I know. I need to just take him in the 4th.
Yeah.
But who do I take in the 4th? Who are you guys taking in the 4th round? There's not even anyone I could remotely prefer here to Brees.
Well, I like
Christian
Travis
Watson.
Etienne.
Yeah, Etienne.
Great. Etienne. No, I'm taking Etienne.
But he goes later in DraftKings.
Drake London goes in the 5th on DraftKings, so you're just reaching anyway.
All those wide receivers go in, and Brees now. It's like all those guys that have been 4th round, like our 3rd and 4th round staples on underdog are 5th round picks on DraftKings, and like Kirk and Nuke and all those guys go ahead of. It's very peculiar ADP, that range on draft.
I just take Brees and then I'm like, oh, this draft I get McLaurin, and then the next draft I get London, and it's like then I get Ayuk, and it's like, all right, whatever. Like I don't care.
I gotta check out DraftKings because I had just started going into DraftKings, and then I went to Ireland, and I was in best ball slows, underdog slows, like throughout. So I like had my feet on the pulse, but I've not done a DraftKings draft since I've been back. I've been back for 12 hours and have already done 4 underdog Best Ball Mania drafts because I like had the shakes coming off the tarmac. But DK's for this evening, I think.
Yeah, I'll be doing some DK. Maybe I'll see you in there.
Can we talk just a slight little pivot? I want to talk about some of the olds and like maybe the inverse.
Yeah.
A lot of go ahead, Pat.
Oh, I think let's talk a little bit more of the rookies because I do think it's we might as well close out the conversation.
Yeah, let's do that and then come back to the olds because it's not very fun to talk about all these guys who are actually underpriced because they're old. But also it's very, very interesting because I think we have the Michael Wilson, and not just, it doesn't have to be all rookies either, but there's a lot of guys I think that I'm also treating like some of these guys as rookies. So like Calvin Austin, I've started to mix in the last round. He's a second-year player, but he didn't play at all last year. Just like youth players that like are not blocked by something, or they could be blocked by something like Garrett Wilson was, and we just get a discount on an elite prospect or whatever. Who's jumping out to you guys like kind of in that bucket of rookie or young player right now?
Well, what's jumping out at me is the most interesting guy in that bucket is Christian Watson, because he is a great example of a prospect that was super questionable, super raw. Even the sample we did get of him in the NFL, like I think people do sort of have this memory of him like, oh, he just scored 40 points every single week, right? Like he just only scored touchdowns. I mean, he played in 14 games. He saw 66 targets. That is not a particularly good target earning profile. He was out-targeted by Romeo Doubs and Robert Tonyan. Randall Cobb got 50 targets in 13 games.
That's crazy.
It is
that
crazy.
Alone, just crazy that happened.
Like it's just all of that is crazy, but Randall Cobb getting 50 targets at age 33 is nuts. And the other thing, I mean, it's just someone said this to me, and I really wish I remember who, but they said he could just be Green Bay Packers Chase Claypool, who we just talked about earlier.
You've said it to me, so I've been like thinking you came up with this. We got to track down.
I've had fly people on Twitter saying that for months.
Okay, yeah, like it's just out there. It's out there in the ether. It's like a pretty good combination because Watson scored. It was all touchdowns. And weirdly enough, 2 of them were rushing the same way 2 of Chase Claypool's were rushing.
Seems like a red flag.
I think it's a good comp, but I think that the people making the comp like don't actually understand.
They don't know what they're saying.
I think a lot of people are like, he's just scored a lot of touchdowns. Like I've seen people be like, make like Watson, Gabe Davis comps. Like that doesn't really hold out. But people do forget that Chase Claypool, similar to Christian Watson, also had like fantastic targets per route run, peripherals going on in year one. I totally agree with your point though, like your larger point, Davis, that
it's mostly the fact that Doubs was so like Doubs contributed earlier and then Watson's big breakout didn't happen until Doubs got injured. In fact, the game that Doubs played 1 snap against the Lions was, I believe, the Christian Watson. No, I'm wrong. It was the next game that it was Watson's first touchdown, I believe, but the breakout game didn't happen until after. But the fact that the breakout for Watson did not happen until Doubs got injured that's like from if I'm evaluating Christian Watson as a dynasty guy, like, do I want to trade a future first for this guy, which is what he would cost to acquire in most formats right now? I think the answer is probably no. Like Watson is not the profile guy I'm super interested in buying, but I also very aware I could just be wrong. Like Watson could be a guy like actually this buying window is cheap and he actually is a 2nd round pick next year.
Well, I love the Christian Watson thing that you brought up, and I go even broader. I think this is like the biggest example of where Dynasty kicks in. Like I heard your show, Davis, truly the best podcast of the entire year was your live streamed draft with Liam and Kyle. And the like discussion of like, what's the difference between Chris Olave and Christian Watson anyway? Was like me like walking down a pier in Galway and screaming like, they're way better than he is. And I think
which Kyle defended. You got to give Kyle.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I like screamed it at like a random stranger on the street, and then Kyle said it, and I was like, "Thanks, Kyle." And then they were like, "Who's Kyle?" Anyway, I think it's like that idea where players come into the NFL, and I think for people who don't play Dynasty or especially if they don't play like Devy or really pay a whole lot of attention to the prospecting sphere generally, people have their preconceived notions and then really wipe those clean. And sometimes you'll even see people, not in this room, but you'll see on Twitter sometimes like almost chastised where something will happen, like sometimes even just in the preseason, and it'll be like, like you better not keep such a tight hold on your priors because like this guy's a starter or like this guy's the RB5 on the depth chart or whatever. And it's like you're supposed to almost forget everything and it's all this new information. Like this Michael Wilson stuff is like an example.
Don't,
where
hey, be careful. Be careful.
We're into
Be
Michael
careful.
Wilson on this show.
You're about to get
oh
muted.
my God. If I was to, if you were to put what is the state of 2023 preseason discourse in one picture, it's a Nathan Yonke tweet with Michael Wilson, 3 rocket ships above an image that says Michael Wilson, 14 snaps, 8 routes, 0 targets. That is the state of 2023 fantasy Twitter.
I mean, you're not wrong,
Guilty.
but on the same hand, I'm going to draft the shit out of Michael Wilson.
I'm drafting so much Michael Wilson, Jacob.
Oh my God. Rocket ships, 0 targets, rocket ship emoji. Okay, Michael Wilson doesn't matter. It doesn't cost anything. A great example of this to me, and I'm going to get pushback. I'm going to get pushback from, I think, some people. But like James Cook is a really great example to me of a player who on the surface looks like he's going to get all the work. He's the RB1, has the pass catching archetype profile, and is absolutely steaming up the draft boards right now. And I've seen people say, what's the difference between James Cook and Jahmyr Gibbs, for example? And I think that the dynasty mindset, whether it be, incorrect or correct, who knows? We'll see how this plays out this season. But like, I'm definitely the person standing in the street, like with my stop sign out to the James Cook hype. I've gotten up to the point where I think that he was a good pick where he was going, which I previously did not think. I don't think he's a good pick where he's going currently. And I think my take in that basically is the long view. Like, I can't dispute anything that we're seeing currently. Like, yes, if he gets the role that it seems like he might from the preseason usage, he could potentially be a smash. He has a lot of the skill sets we want in fantasy. My long view take on the matter is just this guy didn't play as a high volume rusher or high volume snap getter or even a high volume receiver at any point in his career. It's not just that he's small. It's that he didn't have this profile. People with this profile don't tend to be massive hits right away at running back. And if he ever does work up to that, it's probably going to take him a couple of years to adjust and start to gradually gain more and more volume, like we've seen with a guy like a Tony Pollard, for instance.
How much does he weigh?
Never had this volume profile.
Like 190?
He weighs like one.
No, he's more than that, isn't he?
I think he's 199.
I think that's right.
But for me with Cook, it's not even just about the weight. Like, my concern more with Cook is that he's just never been used in this way. And I think it's like a really thin scenario for a player who was never used as a true every down back or even an every receiving down back. Like, he was a change of pace receiving back at Georgia, but he wasn't like a Jahmyr Gibbs where he split time in the rushing work, but he was getting all of the passing work. For him to then all of a sudden become this snap dominating back in year 2 in the NFL off of that, I think is really unlikely. So to me, that's where, I'm seeing 190 there. So
5'11", 190. Official Bills website. I wanted to make sure I was.
Well, that's small.
That's not great. They thought he came in heavier than that.
I thought he
came in at 199. He was at the combine.
You guys know who
that number was
is
something. All right.
the best at banging this drum. There are many things that Hayden Winks is great at, but he is so consistent and so often with this. And he just posted this 20 minutes ago. For reference, the best rookie season amongst running backs, and I guess he's not a rookie, but the best rookie season for running backs under 205 pounds since 2010. There's been 4 guys who bettered 200 PPR points. Like, it's very hard early in their careers for smaller running backs to score a lot of fantasy points because teams take them off at the goal line. I mean, I think probably my guess would be week 1, it's 1st and goal from the 2-yard line. oldest running back in the NFL, Latavius Murray's getting that carry. I mean, just prepare yourself for that right now.
Yeah, I think it's also like it's important to try to, it's good to have a prior on these guys because to your point, like the fantasy industry is not very like it's going to push you around if you don't have a prior because it's very loud, it's noisy in there. You're going to feel like it's all very discombobulating if you don't have some kind of before everything gets real loud. And
if you're drafting whoever gets tweeted about that week, it's going to be it's like hard,
It's hard. Yeah, or whoever just gets brought up on a podcast, right? Like there's sort of it's very difficult to like synthesize all this information if you don't have like some kind of prior on these guys. And I think Dynasty helps a lot in that sense. But with Cook, like when you look at his profile coming in, he's this undersized back. He's a pretty good breakaway runner. Doesn't necessarily like he's going to be like all that good of a tackle breaker, which makes sense given the size. But then even as a receiver, he didn't profile as one of these ultra elite receivers the way that Alvin Kamara did or Christian McCaffrey did. He profiled as like very good in terms of like yards per out run and efficiency, but he didn't run that many routes per game, which kind of goes to some of the lack of workhorse stuff that Jake was referencing there. So like the prior coming in says this guy projects like he could be a pretty good NFL weapon, but maybe not ever going to be someone we think of as elite. And then as a rookie, he was not good in success rate for NFL Next Gen, which is another thing that I think we should probably like assume coming in with a smaller back like this. He's not going to be necessarily like great between the tackles runner. I've actually seen some stuff on Twitter where people are pointing out he's like kind of not doing that well still. Small sample size preseason stuff.
He just made a ridiculous run in that preseason game where he went full DeAndre Swift and he had like an easy path to get 1 yard for the first down and he like made a jump cut like 6 yards backwards.
And that's concerning because like that's the type of stuff where it's like the coaches are annoyed and they pull him out in short yardage situations because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. And those short yardage situations are some of those valuable carries in all of fantasy. So the fact that Latavius is there and Harris is there and they're basically like the Spider-Man meme, but they are
such the Spider-Man meme.
Yeah, but they're going to be there, they're Spider-Man memeing at the goal line, which is not good for James Cook. Right. So I agree. Like he's someone that's going to be kind of buzzy and someone that's, I would say maybe someone you would be happy to have in Dynasty right now. Maybe it's a sell high situation there, but I don't know that I'm chasing this up in best ball. I'm overweight on James Cook, both on DraftKings and on Underdog, but I think I may end up even with the field because I think I'm sitting out this last part.
My question is,
his
do you think that
receiving yards? Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, do you think that the ceiling? So if you're going to chase the guy up, right? How I a lot of the times like to think about it is like I better be chasing something that is going to win me $3 million because I know I'm getting my money in bad on this guy, and that can be okay. Right, because if the guy is the guy,
well, Cook can definitely do that because he's on the offense. He can definitely score 3 touchdowns in a game in the 3-week sprint, like no doubt about it to me.
But technically,
I think he has a weekly ceiling.
Yeah, technically, I could say that also about his teammates that they could score 3 touchdowns in that game too. So like,
sure.
I'm just trying to think it through. You know what I mean? Like, I would agree that maybe chasing his steam is better than chasing Dameon Pierce's steam of last season. But I'm trying to figure right. There's some kind of push pull on is the juice worth the squeeze if I'm going to chase this guy up there? Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, what's interesting with Cook? So Pat mentioned his yards per route run. I always look in my prospecting stuff. I look at a mix of yards per route run and market share receiving yards because I think that gives you somewhat of a combination of how is this guy on a per route basis, and then is this a guy who is a central component of their receiving offense, both as like an efficiency play, and as an outlet on passing downs. He was like 7.5% best season. That's pretty mediocre. And then just to translate that idea, like early in the offseason, the initial stretch of really positive James Cook Bills buzz were articles saying things like, the Bills' lead running back won't look like most teams' lead running backs because they don't need that much from the running back position. So James Cook will be the lead back. That's because they only need someone to take not that many carries, and they will not need somebody to take that many snaps. And that was like, at that point, treated as really bullish news for Cook, where it was like they view the running back position differently than other teams, so Cook can do what they need them to do. And at around 8 ADP, it was like, yeah, that works.
Yeah.
And then now we've gotten confirmation that like the beat reporters were like seemingly correct in that assertion, at least of what the plan is, which is for James Cook to be the lead back. But you go back to that quote and it's like, if people are taking him in round 5 and round 6, which is like happening in FFPC and FFC drafts, like I don't know.
And it's going to be happening in best ball. I think that's going to lead its way into the best ball world too.
Right. Like now it's like, actually you do need him to be a normal running back. Like you can't have him be like the lead running back for like, because the Bills don't use running backs for him. Like he better be a real running back if you're drafting him in round 5. Like, can he pay off a round 5 price tag if he like stays healthy and has the right spike weeks and he has this role? Sure. But if you're drafting him round 5, like you better hope he has like round 1, 2 type upside, I think, to justify picking a player in round 5. And I would say just like the long view on James Cook, and not just James Cook, but on like running backs generally with his type of profile from a utilization, size, combination perspective would just suggest that it's a really, really thin bet.
I think that is right.
Yep. I want to just talk
just really quickly. You were just talking about how you don't want to take Bijan Robinson or Austin Eckler in the first round because of, the guys that are available later, the wide receiver issues or whatever. Now James Cook is going in a very similar tier to Breece Hall and Josh Jacobs and Ramondre Stevenson and Travis Etienne. Like the price gap used to be pretty freaking wide, right? When those guys all went at the 2-3 turn and James Cook went in the 8th round, we're talking drastically different prices. Yeah. All those guys are falling.
Well, right? He might literally go ahead of J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, he does. His
you guys
ADP
did
is
it
higher.
Right on the you guys on the what was it, the Silver Bullet, Pete's Silver Bullet. You guys had that exact choice and took Cook, right?
Oh, did we? God.
Yeah, I
you know what my vote was.
No, in fairness, I do recall the conversation, and I think that was a Pete and Gratch, but still, like it is literally happening. I mean, I have like 2% Ken Walker because of these structural concerns, and like I have issues with Ken Walker, but I think that's like a way better bet than James Cook personally. If I'm betting on like
I've been in on Ken Walker in the 5th. I think
young
he's okay.
Player in rounds 5 and round 6, like I have. If you're to be like name normal sized running backs with massive college workloads who were able to get over some success rate issues and add more pass catching in year 2. Like I could name a lot of those running backs. Like it's not, I don't think Ken Walker is like a super likely bet to be massive hit, but to me, it's like a really easy picture to paint where like we're in week 4 and it's like, oh, like his success rate's fine now because he got better in his second year in the NFL.
And he's still super fast.
2 balls a game, and he is scoring 18 points per game. And Zach Charbonnet is carrying Gatorade because Pete Carroll takes 78 running backs in the second round. He doesn't use any of them anyway. He's on Pro-Sites Island or whatever. Like, I hope that doesn't happen because I don't have that much Ken Walker and I have a lot of Charbonnet. But like, if we're talking about James Cook in that group, like Ken Walker is like a way more fun talent bet to me.
Can we talk JSN, who you talked about guys who are blocked, and this has been, I think, one of the lessons, right, from, and I think the market has done a better job with JSN than in years past with, guy who's blocked. We can't draft him that high.
Sort of.
I think they have. I mean, just price wise, like CeeDee Lamb was in this position, and CeeDee Lamb was like a 7th round pick, early 7th round pick.
Garrett Wilson was an 11th round pick last year.
Garrett Wilson was an 11th round pick last year.
He was behind Braxton Berrios. Can't draft him.
He does go where Chase. He does go about where Chase was going. So, and I think JSN is a better prospect than most of these other guys. But that's biased. I'm fully admitting that I just got a hard on for JSN. So
If JSN and Quentin Johnson switch landing spots, like JSN would be going in the 3rd, I think.
Or I was going to say 3rd round, yeah.
Yeah. Or even if he was on the Vikings. Like, I think if you switch with Addison.
Then people would just be like, what's the difference between him and Devonta Smith, really?
Or T. Higgins.
Yeah.
And I would be like, I think that he's the better player.
He's better.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And then we'd really have some spicy JSN takes. But right now we just get to go, he's going to earn targets at the end of the season. Let's take him in the end of the 5th.
The fact that he fell to like the 20th.
He's better than Devonta Smith.
Yeah, like the fact he fell to the 20th pick, went to like objectively a pretty not awesome landing spot, and is still going in the 5th round, I think like does speak to the dynastification of best ball for sure.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we almost need JSN to fail so that like we can get that 9th round Garrett Wilson again, because this is definitely the market is definitely priced him up.
We have crossed the Rubicon. As long as there's one rookie wide receiver hit per year, it's over. And in fact, if JSN is the guy you need in the 3-week sprint, like it's over, buddy. It's
Martin Harrison's going in the first fucking round if JSN is that hit. Yeah.
Well, we talk about opportunity a lot. Like I'm often sort of critical of opportunity-based arguments, and yet here we just talked before Jake got on to push back Michael Wilson's opportunity, and how he's going to have opportunity. But that's two things there. One, he's going in the very last rounds of the draft, where I think we do care a bit more about opportunity. Two, he is a rookie, and so the fact that he's going to have opportunity right away is nice. But we also feel pretty confident that he's going to continue to play over the course of the season and potentially see more targets and, get better and actually have more volume, more targets, maybe not that high a bar since he's getting 0 right now. But, the actual end of season opportunity will be even better, even if there is early season opportunity. And JSN is just such a perfect example of that. It's like, hey, we really, really do care about the end of season opportunity. Right? Like if we were going to project out, and it's more difficult to project out the end of season opportunity than week 1, but we also have this thing in our back pocket, which is that rookies consistently produce more as the season goes on relative to the veterans who start falling off. And so you're getting the ascending profile. And so like, I don't know. I mean, it still feels, even at this elevated price, JSN still feels like a huge potential edge in these tournaments, because you get to bet on a really talented guy who's likely to see his highest target share games in the weeks where the money is actually being awarded.
Mm-hmm. Also,
I think.
Go ahead, Jacob.
No, you can go.
I was just going to say the other thing is that's an assumption that he's just not a star out of the gate. He has outs to just being like that. It's not always.
I think we've seen from his preseason usage that he's going to have more like week 1 usage than like Justin Jefferson, for example. Like
sometimes you get Jamar Chase, and sometimes you get Odell Beckham, who the moment he stepped foot on an NFL field was just a superstar. Sometimes you get Amon-Ra, but sometimes these dudes are just awesome. And like, look, DK Metcalf is great. DK Metcalf is a beast of a man, but he's a little bit of a specific archetype of a wide receiver, right? He's not doing the Deontay Johnson get open 2 yards down the field type of a thing. And Tyler Lockett is a very good NFL real life player, but if JSN is Jamar Chase, Tyler Lockett is not prohibiting JSN from being awesome in week 1. You know what I mean? That's type. And so like you have the outs to what Pat said, which is like almost feels like a slam dunk, but you also have the outs to like, I don't know, he's just awesome. I don't care if he's in the slot, if he's getting open and getting targeted constantly. Like, I don't care that he's not run blocking in 2 wide receiver sets. Like, I don't care about any of that if he's a superstar. Like, why does all that, like, we're really worried about projectable volume, like to that level. Like, I get it at a certain point.
Worry about it. Volume, but it does matter, but it matters most in the end of the season. So it's like, guess what? The projectable volume concerns, like, they get less and less and less. And in some ways, like, who's probably going to play a lot at the end of the season? The Seahawks first round wide receiver. Like, he's probably going to play a lot at the very end of the season. Like, that actually is a pretty safe bet, when you zoom out.
Totally. I mean, I my only pushback is like, I actually don't think that if he fails, it will change that much. And like David was talking about crossing the Rubicon, I think my biggest takeaway on it is that like the fact that shows like this exist, I think is like forever changing how we are doing our fantasy drafting, just in the sense that I don't think people actually shift their what views on fantasy they're receptive to that much year to year. Like I had to have this like come to Jesus moment in like the airport last night, where I'm like seeing people being like, every year people hype up these backup running backs, but like Najee Harris is still going to see 300 carries. And I'm like, how do people like look at like we're drafting Tony Pollard in the first round? Like we're literally doing that. Like Khalil Herbert's a starting running back, like Ramondre Stevenson's starting running back. Like people are mocking like the hyping up of the backup running backs who are all starting running backs right now. Like these are all the guys who got hyped up correctly. But like the people
even Rachaad White, who didn't quite pay off last year, it's now starting running back.
Right. And then like on the other hand, like so I'm making fun of the Zeke people who are now the Najee people who will one day be the whoever else people. But like on the other side of that spectrum.
Well, they're going to be the Dameon Pierce people next year when he's going in the third round.
I actually think Dameon Pierce is good.
Well, certainly they're going to be the Ramondre people in 3 years.
They might, buddy. I hate to say this, but the call might be coming from inside the house. They might be the Ramondre people right now.
Yes.
Yeah, they might be.
Okay.
Cooled off.
But I have not cooled off. We could get into Ramondre if you want, but on the other side of that spectrum, like not just throwing stones at that side of the house, like, but I mentioned this I think on our Dynasty podcast before, but it was like we're never going back because Trey Lance was the most colossally bad Dynasty investment of like the last decade. And then we're still drafting Anthony Richardson right where we drafted Trey Lance.
Can I push back on the Trey Lance thing? Because I got out, man. You could get out. You can get out of Trey Lance. Now I got out at some
sure. I'm not saying like every single micro transaction, but I'm saying like if theoretically you like bought the top, like you rode basically to zero, like without even like being able to like see him play games. Like that was like horrendous. Like we got the 0th percentile outcome and people are still signing up for it again with Richardson. I think it's just a matter of like, there is way more optionality for content to consume. There's way more optionality for formats to play. And it's allowing people who have always been predisposed towards an approach to fantasy football that isn't based more on have we seen it already, snap shares, projectable volume, etc. They have more avenues to play formats that reward it, like best ball, where you get to focus on the end of the season, like Dynasty, where you get to hold these players for forever. They get to focus on content from Substacks and from different independent podcasts and Discords. Like the market has responded to a group of fantasy player that has clearly always been there. But now they're in this reciprocal feedback loop where they're just going to continue finding each other. And you have people that are now understanding the thesis of the play, so to speak, such that I think if JSN fails, like the people who were drafting JSN at this point, like they understood the bet. And if it fails, they're going to still try to make that bet later. And the people who weren't drafting JSN still won't. But like, I don't think there's that many like persuadable voters, so to speak. Like, I think it's just a matter of like people finding outlets for what they already want to do, and we're just going to keep having this dichotomy.
I was just being nostalgic when I said we needed him to fail. We don't want him to fail. I mean, first of all, he's like my highest.
I really don't want him to fail. I just drafted him in the 7-10 in a high stakes draft.
Yeah, we don't want him to fail. We definitely don't want him to fail.
Yeah.
But I think I was just being nostalgic for the days of 2022 when you get Garrett Wilson in the 9th.
Yeah, those are the days. Jacob, you know who, and getting Jalen Reagor, in the 15th, those are the days. Alexander Madison jumped out to me when you were going through the people, you still see a little bit of
Madison is the slappy pick. He's the slappy pick now.
But isn't it so funny that, like you said, those people, the people who probably love Alexander Madison this year, thought he was terrible. Right? Like, why would you draft this backup running back? He's never going to do anything when Dalvin Cook is there or whatever. And you're now literally we are literally seeing why you took Alexander Madison in the 12th round, because when you remove Dalvin Cook from the situation, you get this guy that is a way better projected pick, right? And I would argue that old Alexander Madison would go a lot high. Like if we didn't have everything that you just talked about in the industry, this was the 3rd round. No, this guy would be right there with the Jacobs and the Ramondres and all that, because
he would go where Kenyon Drake went in 2020.
He has more projectable volume than Najee. He has more his backups are way worse than Najee Harris's backup, and we don't have any evidence of those guys stealing work from him. He projects for more work than Najee Harris.
Kenyon Drake was a late 1st round best ball pick the first year the Underdog launched as a site. He went in the 1st round, right? Like that's like we play an entirely different fantasy football game.
Him and Josh
like 4
Jacobs
years
both,
later.
right? At the 1-2 turn that year, I
Right.
think it was. Yeah.
But Josh Jacobs was like entering his second year in the NFL. He was a first round pick, but like the idea of a Kenyon Drake, like 4-game stretch at the end of the season after being literally Kenyon Drake and then being a first round pick, like that will just never happen again. Right. Like Tony Pollard is going later today than Kenyon Drake went down. Like it's just,
It is wild. Yeah. I mean, Kenyon Drake is almost like, I don't know, Khalil Herbert's probably the best comp for him or something.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's actually crazy. It's truly
Khalil
crazy.
Herbert's got into the 8th and I'm like,
Well,
that seems a little odd for me.
I wanted to shout out a piece
as
that
when we get done with that, as a like James Cook, Dameon Pierce, Khalil Herbert, these running backs that are shooting way up the boards, that it's kind of projectable volume based. Like it's not that they're not good. I think that these guys are all pretty good, all three of them. But like, I'm not sure anything has tangibly changed for Khalil Herbert, but he goes 2 or 3 rounds before because all the evidence is right. He's the starter.
This ties into, I think I want to talk Herbert, but I also want to talk Rachaad White, who Jacob wrote a piece on. And I think it perfectly goes to this discussion of we now have a different price on this guy. So it's like, is he the starter? Can he hold the job all year? How good is he even? Is he a complete back? Does he have some major flaws? We are used to these questions being pretty easy to answer, which is that like, yeah, there's enough issues where I don't have to think about this guy. And now the prices are lower enough where you have to think through the bets a little bit more. And I thought your White piece was really interesting because you kind of came to different conclusions on best ball versus dynasty.
Yeah, I mean the White piece, it was a weird piece to write because if you find yourself reading it, for most of it, I'm like, White sucks at this. He also sucked at this. I think his prospect profile was overrated. He was really bad at this. I think the Packs are going to be terrible and he's going to be terrible. Anyway, I'm drafting him slightly above the market. Like that was mostly the piece. Because like it went into this thing where like, yeah, it's nuts. Like I think like very little of Rachaad White, but he goes in round 8 and that is like the bare minimum price. And basically what I came to is like all of the like talent questions, all of the environment questions are fully priced in. And so like, to me, the only decision left to make is like, do I think that it's more likely that he's either better than we think, or at least better than I think? I think you think he's better than I do. But better than I think. Bucks are better than I think.
He's a chance to be better than you. I think he could maybe, in the same way Walker, it's like maybe he figures some shit out. But
right. So like, yeah, what I end up left with is like, okay, like all of these like White specific micro concerns are priced in a way they just like would never have been a few years ago because more people are paying attention to this stuff. And so now it's just the chances that those concerns are wrong versus the chances that you lose the job to TBD back.
Everyone's a fucking nerd now. I mean, that's really the issue with the game is everyone's just like monitoring their like. Well, I got to monitor my exposures. I'm a little bit overexposed to Marvin
Cole's
Mims,
definitely coming from inside the house on this.
I think this is literally the house. This is the call center.
This is the call center.
But it's just like, which is fine. But it's like it's harder, man. It's harder. And we do these podcasts for free. I mean, all of us have ways that you can pay for our content stuff. But by and large, you can sort of get the gist of what very serious people who are thinking about this stuff all the time, like you can get it for free. It's not like poker where or DFS where you have to have access to really sophisticated tools and people like in best ball and in fantasy football, managed even honestly more so than best ball. You actually can teach a man to fish, like you can. Whereas I could sit down with Brian Hooper for an hour and he could be like, this is how I make a living playing DFS. And I'd be like, I ain't doing that shit. I'm just, I'm not doing that. It's too much work for me. But in best ball, if you consume good content and you're like above, bell curve IQ type person, like you're slightly right side, not even full right side, like you probably are drafting pretty plus EV teams.
Semi-right side seems like a good name for a new site. Semi-right side.
Semi-right side belt. Maybe whenever I decide to make a site, that's what it'll be. It'll be 104 IQ. That's it.
Pat's planning for the next. Are you planning for your next site already?
Slide to the right. How about that? Slide to the right.com.
There you
slide
right.
That I
Slide
feel like
right.
that you were watching too much of the porn earlier. The slide to the right, I feel like has a.
I think slide to the right is. Oh, geez. I was going to say slide to the right is actually Vivek Ramaswamy's slogan.
I'm here for. I've actually descended into left side of the bell curve drafting the last like 4 days because I'm just doing so many that I don't have like using the brain power needed to draft all good teams. I don't have. So I'm like, I'm on the clock at pick 165. Adam Thielen is the first name at the top of the queue. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is at the bottom of my screen. I'm not clicking any names there in between. Luke Musgrave, come on down. Like I'm just clicking. I don't care.
Well, so that's, I mean, I guess it's kind of circling back, but like Musgrave one is one of those guys where it's like, he's now shifting though from a Michael Wilson to a like, you kind of almost need him to be something. Now,
yeah, don't go look at his college stats if you've been chasing him up the draft boards, by the way.
Yeah,
for real.
Well, Musgrave is a really weird player because I feel like I've been talking out of both sides of my mouth on him the whole offseason, where like in the lead up to the draft, I was like, yeah, I don't really know about this Luke Musgrave prospect profile. But then, as always with tight ends, I'm always like, but we don't really know anything about tight ends, and he's athletic, so sure. And then
that's
the
true 160 IQ is to make all these points about a tight end and then say, yeah, I don't know, tight end's pretty random. Eric Ebron was 108th overall pick. Like anything can happen. Like that's really the full circle.
And then like if the draft happened, and I remember like I posted like my rankings like just the night after, like before I had any idea what rookie ADP was going to be. And my first reaction was going to be like fade Musgrave because he was actually not that good of a prospect. He's kind of overrated. Take Tucker Kraft, like he's going to be like way cheaper, better production profile. And then like ADP came out, and then like a week later, I was like, oh, actually, like that's super priced in. The market like doesn't care at all about Luke Musgrave. He's going in like the mid third in rookie drafts, and I think you should just take him and Kraft in like every single rookie draft because like they're both like really undervalued. And then I was like very in on Musgrave. I think he's like my second most drafted rookie in Dynasty season. And then we come around to best ball season. And I was pretty into Musgrave because it was like, hey, he's rookie, he's free. And yeah, now I'm kind of the guy where I'm like 4 or 5 rounds higher than Michael Mayer, like for Luke Musgrave. Like seems weird. But also
he's not blocked.
Also, I kind of just want to keep clicking him. Like I see that 100% snap rate. And I'm like, it's actually fine, I guess.
I know. I kind of think it's mostly fine, but I almost want him to get to a certain point where I can be like, this is dumb. But in between then I would like to like get a little bit more because I was a little bit too skeptical of him early on.
I think once he gets up to be equal with LaPorta, that's when I will wipe my hands clean.
But I'm taking him, like I'm still willing to take him over LaPorta right now because I'm at like 16% LaPorta, but I think I'm only like 4% Musgrave, and that just feels bad. The problem with Musgrave was there was like 8 tight ends that all went in round 18 that I wanted 10% of. So like,
wait, what do you have?
Do you get them all?
All those. No, I told Jacob just have fun staying poor with 4%.
I heard 24, and that's why I was like,
no. Well, shit. If I keep drafting, I mean, who knows? By the time I get done with these slow puppies, we might be there.
No, I took your tip, Davis. I now every draft that I win in the last day, I star Luke Musgrave before I even started.
Draft, I star Gainwell, Michael Wilson, Musgrave, and Tutu Atwell, and then I'm like, I know my last 4 picks.
Michael Wilson is about to be to me what Van Jefferson is to Ben. Like he's going to be a guy where it's like you truly gain nothing from fading him because his opportunity cost is 0 every single year, but he just like irks you so much that you feel the need to like articulate the fade nonetheless. and I'm just gonna like be angry about Michael Wilson for like no real reason.
Hey man, I'm telling you, it's fun to just change your mind. It's fun to just go.
It is because I was drafting Greg Dortch unironically like a month ago, and now we've completely moved on.
I draft Michael Wilson. I'm just not going to admit it or talk about it or be happy about it.
It's a good time.
I'm taking him.
It's a good time. I don't think I could. I don't know why I'm pretending like I could. I could not pick Michael Wilson out of a lineup. I've never
I
bothered
have
to
I have no idea what he looks like. Yeah.
no idea what he looks
I'm
like.
not even convinced he's real. Like, it's not a real name.
It's
No,
possible
didn't
it's
you-
not.
every video
Didn't
that
you
you see
see-
of the Cardinals facility looks fake. Like it looks like a.
Well, they don't have beat writers. They don't
Do you
have
ever
beat
see like
writers.
those
They don't.
sports drink commercials? Like if you see a commercial for a sports drink, they'll like show like a team playing sports, but they don't have real logos. They're just like rolling around in like some like vaguely like NFL team looking uniform with like blank helmets. Like that's just what I think of when I think of the Cardinals.
If you
It's like a
Google
commercial
like
for some electrolyte
royalty-free
beverage.
football images, then Michael Wilson will come up.
Yeah, it was the Gotham football team in Dark Knight Rises, where they got Big Ben and Hines Ward and the field collapses, and all that. That's the Arizona Cardinals. Side note, speaking of that, did you ever read the stories about the Cardinals and like how big of just a piece of shit franchise that they are?
Yes.
So these players get all this free shit, right? And like, I mean, some of the players are
in
talking about
Arizona.
how like I don't ever leave the facility because they have they got sleep pods and they got every hyperbaric chambers and
And they're
you
paying
get
like
all this
$12 for a
luxury food
clubhouse
for
and
free.
fries.
Yeah, these motherfuckers had to like pay for hot dogs at training camp and stuff. Like,
that was the
paying-
same with the
unbelievable.
The Royals used to have a pop machine that you had to pay for, and then they got shamed for it. And
Well, that's like the scene in Moneyball when David Justice is like trying to get the machine out of the vending
it's
machine.
literally
and Brad Pitt comes down. He's like, "They're paying you $10 million not to play for them. Shut up and drink your 7-Up," or whatever it is.
I had a point I was gonna make.
Can we talk about the rookie tight ends? Can we talk about all the rookie tight ends? And then, like,
Michael Mayer is the greatest example of this, where he's JSN but at a tight end, where he was mocked in the first round. He's blocked by Austin Hooper right now. Everyone's out on him. Like, you can get him in the 18th round every draft. Now, this is such a micro thing, but his bye week is terrible for the teams you want to take him on.
It's so true.
Because he shares a bye week with Mark Andrews,
he's the
Waller.
perfect fit with. He's like a perfect fit with Mark Andrews.
Right. And Waller.
And I know you guys aren't into him, but Cole Kmet as well. And and Hawkinson as well. So just like tight ends, like top 15 tight ends, he shares a bye week with 4 of them. So a lot of the times, have you guys done this? Have you guys done a LaPorta, Musgrave, Meyer tight end room yet on Underdog?
I haven't, but I now will.
You do it, and you're like, I'm not getting a tight end point until week 4, but when they start coming, they are gonna be so good.
Yeah, you're not getting a tight end point to week 4, but there's like 3 other teams in your league that are also not getting this points, and they don't know.
And they drafted a bunch of tight ends.
The thing is, like when you draft Luke Musgrave as your tight end 2 behind Kyle Pitts, you think that you're getting one every week starter and one guy who might run more routes as the season progresses. You just don't know in which order.
You just don't know which one.
You just didn't realize that you drafted the 50% route rate in round 6 and you drafted the 90% route rate in round 16.
I'll come clean here because we're almost 90 minutes into this show. I take a lot of Kyle Pitts teams with 3 tight ends. Because that's me complicitly admitting that he's probably not going to score enough points. Like, I probably got to do something about that.
You don't want to be burned if he does come through. So you want to get some, but you also are fully admitting
he is my most drafted tight end. I think
sponsored by Trojan condoms.
I think we've jumped the shark on
fine.
Kyle Pitts' hatred.
I think Kittle, Goddard, and Pitts. It's totally fine to take 3 tight ends. I would say make sure the other 2 are cheap, but like you're taking 3 tight ends because you're going, this guy is going to give me like 2 of the best weeks of my whole season.
But I might need some 10-pointers. Yeah, I might need some 10-pointers in there.
I mean, I think it's totally fine to take 3 tight ends just generally because the tight ends in round 18 project better than the wide receivers. So like, it's totally fine to just be like, this team is a 2-6-8-2, but actually it's a 2-6-7-3, and Luke Musgrave is my wide receiver 8.
Like like Michael Mayer or Justin Ross. Like, Michael Mayer's going to score more points than Justin Ross. It pains me to say it, but it is what it is. So yeah, the 3 rookie tight end room. That is that's the opposite.
You guys are
tight end.
Like the fact that you guys are fucking pumped to take Michael Wilson because he's going to run 80% of the routes on the worst team ever assembled since like the AFL merger. Like that's just all of the tight ends available in round 18. Like they're all just like a bunch of Michael Wilsons. Sorry?
I didn't know he was on the Buccaneers.
Well, that's Trey Palmer, who I'm also now taking in round 18, who's going to do nothing on a shitty offense.
Yeah, I'm debating, but I'm debating whether or not to make you guys a Trey Palmer clip tonight. But
I'm not depraved enough to take Trey Palmer yet, but I'm like one good camp clip and 2 more hype stories from Bruce Arians.
I've taken Trey Palmer. Yeah. I have 30% Trey Palmer in Dynasty, and it's like every time in my like in our Bulletproof Dynasty Discord, I'll post my exposures. People kept being like, "What's your take on Trey Palmer?" And I'd be like, one time I was like texting with Ben the day before the draft, and he was like sending me like a couple Trey Palmer YouTube clips, and I was like, "That's enough for me to take 30% in the last round of my rookie drafts." And if that comes through, God bless Trey Palmer.
He's very fast.
Yeah, I think he's a totally viable one. But yeah, like all those tight ends are like going to play. Like Hunter Henry's free. Like Jelani Woods is going to run. Like Jelani Woods is going to score more points than Josh Downs this year, and he's drafted in the same range.
He's actually not. Josh Downs is
because Josh Downs is not going to catch any touchdowns, and the Colts aren't going to throw any passes.
What if close your eyes? Close your eyes.
Touchdowns.
It's week 17. The Raiders are down to like their 5th and 6th corners. They're indoors. Jimmy G and Anthony Richardson are just trading haymakers in a game that means nothing for either team.
Buddy.
Haymakers part. Jimmy G, what's happening?
AOC is playing in that game.
If you went to Aiden O'Connell, you would have started to listen. Yeah.
I just can see Josh Downs.
When you said Jimmy G.
I just can see Josh Downs in his his Colts blues just racing down the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium. No one in frame with him as Scott Hansen gives us his pithy little bit.
Jarrett Stidham puts his helmet back on, who was recently traded a 3rd-round pick, so Josh McDaniels could get him back.
Brian Hoyer's in the game.
Brian Hoyer.
Oh, God.
I will not be good for all my Devontae Adams and Taylor teams.
Just real quick, Davis, I know you have to leave, but Jakob and Pat, I wouldn't mind covering a couple other things. Sure. But after Davis runs, if you guys still got a few minutes, but I did want to.
This is how long Davis a podcast is. We actually have to stagger our guests.
I know we're literally staggering guests. But Davis, was there anything you wanted to hit before you wanted to go, or just any guys that have come out to you, or of course, if you got something you want to. You got work coming out.
Deuce Vaughn is a great example of this, where it's like we all agree he's really talented, but this is the understanding what coaches are going to do with players, which is that if there was ever going to be a coach that was going to give Deuce Vaughn the requisite number of touches to post a fantasy relevant season, it's not Brian Schottenheimer and Mike McCarthy. I think Deuce Vaughn will have like 6 insanely fun plays where he gains 20 yards out of nothing, but he is going to be like, remember Antoine Smith for the Falcons? He scored like 5 50-yard touchdowns one year. I mean, this is almost a decade ago, but it's like that. Deuce Vaughn is not going to have a super fantasy relevant role. Like he's going to be $4,200 on DraftKings, and people will be like, you can play him at 1%. And like, congrats, he scored a touchdown. You got 9 points, and you did not pass go and collect the $1 million. Like
he's going to do more than this guy, but he reminds you. Remember Trindon Holiday?
Yes,
the Olympic sprinter.
Yes,
he reminds me of the guy who, like you said, you draft when you do your fantasy draft on Madden and you start your franchise, you always take Deuce Vaughn, and you always took Trindon Holiday because he's fast as hell and awesome in the video game, and you can use him, and none of the actual real life football shit matters. And I think Deuce is a better version of that because he plays running back. We're going to get some fun Deuce Vaughn plays this year, I think. Are we ever going to get Deuce Vaughn in a fantasy role?
Yes, but it's going to necessitate a coaching change in Dallas. So Antoine Smith in 2014 for the Falcons had 23 rushing attempts and
wait,
15
who's trading for Deuce Vaughn?
Chargers sent a 7th-round pick in 2 years, and Deuce Vaughn breaks up.
And he just becomes Austin Eckler. All right, guys. I'm out of here on the Deuce Vaughn will be Austin Eckler note. Enjoy yourselves.
I'm just picturing. That's a fucking mic drop. Leaving Deuce Vaughn is the next Austin Eckler.
I'm just picturing Stephen Jones messaging the NFL Slack, being like, "At all Deuce Vaughn OTB," and like not getting any replies.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, I called Calvin Austin the next Tyreek Hill the other day on Pete's show, and so I can't really say too much about Deuce Vaughn. I do think he's at least like interesting to bring up. Obviously, talking through Dynasty and stuff. I'm willing to listen to other people. And if you guys have a differing opinion, I've been like so staunchly against, especially on underdog, Deuce Vaughn, and the fact that he's like routinely been drafted all year. People are legitimately like drafting him thinking they're getting something out of him. And like I said, okay, will he pop up for a couple touchdowns this year? Probably. He's a really explosive, fun little gadget player. But like, I feel like because he's fun and because he is explosive, we've like, speaking of jumping the shark, like he's going to have to be in the return game, I guess, to be active on game days. I don't know what they're going to do with Rojo when he comes back from suspension, but like Rico Dowdle, you can hate him all you want. I don't think Rico Dowdle is good, right? The Cowboys believe Rico Dowdle is Tony Pollard's backup in the ways that matter. It doesn't mean that Deuce is never going to play. But Rico Dowdle, if something happens to Tony Pollard, who's playing third down and who's getting the goal line carries? Rico Dowdle. And like, we don't have to like it, but right? It was like last year, we thought it was Chris Evans, but guess what? Ho hum, it's Samaje Perine because the team just cares about what he does much. And frankly, we were just probably wrong about how good Chris Evans is and how good Perine is. But like Deuce Vaughn is just like, especially in 18 rounds, like if you said in the 20th round on DraftKings, okay, sure, whatever, like fine. But like in 18 rounds and half point PPR, like I've never once even considered drafting Deuce Vaughn. And I feel like I feel like like maybe just for fun, or if I'm drunk or something. Yeah.
No, I have not clicked his name. I've clicked well, at first I was clicking Malik Davis, and then I hard pivoted to Rico.
He's a better
Dowdle.
click than Davis, I think, right?
He's definitely a better.
No,
I'm not
actually,
sure Malik's going to be on the team when Rojo comes back.
I mean, I don't think Rojo's going to make the team.
Why does Rojo have to catch strays on here? I wasn't going to.
I know. How did we get to? It is
my
objectively funny
I think
that Rojo versus Deuce Vaughn is like a conversation. A couple of years ago, we were like, how high should we draft, Ronald Jones? And last year, like, oh my God, Rojo's on the Chiefs. Now we're debating him versus the smallest running back of all time.
Versus Rico Dowdle.
I'm thinking, what I've mostly read is that they're only going to have 3. So I think Malik gets caught. I doubt he gets claimed. And then he could go on practice squad.
Come back, yeah.
And then I think Deuce will just be active on game days because of special teams. Rico's the actual backup. And then when Rojo comes back, then I think like as soon as he's no longer placed on the suspended list, unless they've suffered an injury, I think it's probably night for Ronald Jones.
It might be the career. Might be the end. This might be the end.
It's a real bummer when coming back from a suspension is when things get worse.
Yeah. I don't know. We might see multiple of those when JMO comes back. I don't know how that's gonna go.
Oh my goodness!
Kendre comes back from the knee sprain and looks as good as ever. Kamara could come back to a lesser role than everybody expected. I sprinkled when Kendre got hurt. There's another guy I would like to talk about Kendre a little bit actually. Kendre was a guy I was really excited for. I think he's really talented, really explosive. I think some of the things that were potential gaps in his prospect profile at TCU were somewhat explainable in terms of that's kind of how they roll and that's kind of how they use some guys in terms of like not a huge pass catcher, but I think he can do it basically. It's kind of like he's not as explosive in the run game maybe as Ken Walker, but it's kind of how I viewed the Ken Walker thing. Like, I don't think he's completely physically incapable of catching a check down. You know what I mean? I just think that that's how it rolls. College is just different. So anyway, but then, I clicked Kamara a couple times when Kendre got hurt thinking, maybe this is just going to end up a redshirt season for Kendre. And then man, he comes back last night, looks awesome, looks amazing in the passing game. I don't know if you saw that diving catch he made. What are you thinking about like a guy like him who his ADP is like 190 on DraftKings now. Like he fell hard.
He fell hard.
Man, I have been so back and forth on Kendre, but it's been a roller coaster. Like he's hurt, he's not hurt. Kamara suspended. He's suspended for less games than we thought. Like it's just they're signing Kareem Hunt. They're signing Darrell Williams. It's just all over the place. I thought that I had like a really strong read on who Kendre was, and I thought that was like a legitimate edge versus the market. And then I watched him run that wheel route last night and it changed everything for me. I was like, oh man, I think I've been underrating this guy. That was such a not just the diving catch, but like he looked like legitimately natural running that route. So that was encouraging. My take on him had been like everything I do in my running back articles. I kind of divide the running game into like 3 different broadly defined categories. I talk about like the contact avoidance stage of rushing the ball, kind of your pre-contact behind the line, the contact evasion, so tackle breaking, and then your post-contact breakaway phase. And a lot of Kendre stuff, like he tends to be the type of running back coming out of college that I'm usually lower on than the market, because his best stats are really concentrated in the tackle breaking phase of the game. And for as long as I've been doing running back stuff, I find that those running backs sometimes get overrated, because you'll see backs that have like a fairly average or above average profile overall. And the metrics that people like to cite the most are the tackle breaking metrics.
Yeah.
And
David
so
Montgomery.
then people
This
say,
is
look
the
at
David
this guy.
Montgomery.
You pay full
Right,
price
it's
for
the David
broken
Montgomery.
tackle.
Yeah.
So
fantasy.
it's what'll happen is people will say, like, look at this guy. Sure, he's average, but he's really good at this. So he's actually really good. And it's like, no, he's actually average in spite of that, which means he's bad at other things.
Yeah.
So like, this is like
the really important shit for fantasy. He's bad at the really
Right.
important stuff.
So I've been calling this the Zach Moss corollary. And to be clear, like because this was like as a prospect, like this was a big thing where everybody's like, his missed tackle rate. And it's like, yeah, but he's still not efficient. So he must suck at everything other than missed tackles. I think Kendre is like clearly better than that. Like he has more juice for sure. But I always get leery on those heavy tackle breaking. And then you look at the receiving, and I agree with you. I don't think he's like a lost cause as a receiver. His yards per route run is fine. His market share receiving yards is terrible. And he didn't run that many routes per game. So to me, that was like, if at some point in his career he ends up in a feature role, I think he could have okay receiving upside. My issue was like, what are the chances he plays long down and distance snaps for the 2-minute drill this year? Probably close to 0%, I figure, just because like he's a 20-year-old rookie who has no like experience playing passing downs. But then you see this, like, it's interesting because like Jamal Williams is such a contrast. Like in Green Bay, he was like the Samaje Perine, where like he can play every situation. He had like, I think it was 8 games over an 80% snap share in Green Bay. He had totally acceptable yards per route run figures. I think he was like between 1.1 and 1.2 for a couple of years. And he could just kind of envelop whatever was left over whenever Aaron Jones missed. And in Detroit, it was totally the opposite. His snap share in games without Swift was like 1 percentage point different. He had a 19% route participation for the year. He was solely a grinder back. And so at first I was like, I think maybe they gradually increase Williams' role. And then I was like writing, like, what if they just use Eno Benjamin on third downs before Kamara comes back? And then I think that they actually were going to. I think that I was right, because like then he went down, they bring in Kareem Hunt, then they signed Darrell Williams. Like, so I actually think we do kind of see Darrell Williams play third downs to start the season if he makes the team.
Yeah.
But I guess the question is like the way they're using Kendre, like maybe they think he can do this. It would be interesting to see, and that definitely makes me more interested in his upside, because everything that they've signaled is that that's not Jamal. That's not how they envision Jamal. They're going to use him how Detroit did.
I was just going to add, thinking about it like the dynasty perspective. So this is it. It didn't go awesome, but Pat got me. I mean, I was already on Javonte Williams. Let's be totally clear about that. Last year, I loved Javonte Williams. I'm back on him again this year, by the way. At these dudes and these injury recoveries are out of control. Brees is running 25 miles an hour. Javonte Williams is like
shoulders are tough though. Shoulders are tough.
Yeah, exactly. Shout out Dalvin. Dude's shoulders made a putty and can't practice, and everybody's worried about Brees's injury. It's kind of objectively hilarious. But so,
yeah.
But so like I like to. It's not quite a perfect thing for best ball, because like, you know, Pat, you kind of outlined at the very beginning, like we care about this year, right? Like I don't really care what Zay Flowers becomes in 5 years. I don't really care what Michael Wilson becomes in 5 years, because I care about this. I'm trying to win $3 million this year, right? But you can sometimes find these things where it's like, well, we know he's really good, but he's blocked by Melvin Gordon, right? And we really had I mean, Melvin was clearly declining and everything, but we didn't really have a lot of indications. It was literally flat over from Melvin Gordon last year, which it clearly is. Kendre doesn't have quite that, but it's not too different. Okay. So Jamal Williams, we're not worried, like from a dynasty perspective. And you said, okay, Kendre Miller with his production profile and his draft capital, he has nothing but Jamal Williams and an aging Alvin Kamara, who's also suspended for the first 3 games of this season. So he's got 3-game runway to potentially do something and earn the role. And from a dynasty perspective, there's not a lot of these rookies right now, right? Like Charbonnet is blocked by Ken Walker. You know what I mean? He has to outperform him or Walker has to go down, right? Most of these guys are blocked in like a really significant way, even like long-term, you know, obviously not Bijan, not Gibbs, but Gibbs is like locked into a specific role. He's not blocked,
he's semi-blocked, yeah,
but he's blocked in a way like he can't become Bijan. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Right.
But like if Kendre is good,
Right,
he is not blocked in any real substantial way from a dynasty perspective. And so like then I like roll that back and I'm like, obviously this season the roadblocks are more significant than they are in dynasty. But if he has a path fairly soon to being that guy in New Orleans, like that's the thing where like the market is just worried about the projectable volume. They're worried about these aging veterans. Those are the guys I want to be on. You know what I mean? Totally. And I feel like I actually, part of it was the injury, but I got a little skittish. I was pretty
I've
heavy
been skittish
on
and not skittish. Yeah,
but
I've had real faith.
Yeah, it's been touch and go.
And I'm not trying to overreact to the one really good preseason game, but also sometimes those things can be reminders of just being like,
right,
okay, maybe I shouldn't have like really hopped out there for that stretch, and I can be back in now that I know he's okay.
Yeah.
Right, the knee sprain is not an issue.
I think the skittishness for me was that I wasn't super sold on. I mean, I liked the prospect, but I wasn't as juiced about him as a lot of the dynasty market. Like the dynasty market loves Kendre Miller. Like he's a big like dynasty guy play. Dynasty rookie drafts, like it was him, A-Chain, and Charbonnet were like a tier, like well ahead of the next tier, which was like the Roschon, Tank Bigsby group. And I was kind of light on Kendre there. And then I remember looking at Beth Ball and I was like, he's the guy with the clearest path to me because the guys on his team suck. Like he can just do it without an injury.
Right.
And he's conventional size. But he's going later. So I was like, I'm really in. Like, I'm just going to get all my exposure in seasonal. And then the injury stuff. And then I've been like, but I'm not that convicted on this player. But the process, and then every time something bad happens, then he drops even more in price. And I'm like, oh, I just got to get in. So I'm above the market, and I'll stay above the market.
Yeah, I'm at like 12% on underdog, and I kind of wish I had more now that I don't feel skittish anymore. But I may feel skittish in a week, and be glad I don't have a ton. I'm at 20% on DraftKings.
Nice.
Where he is even cheaper. So
190, man. I mean, he's rising back up now after the game last night and everything. But when he got hurt, I mean, he plummeted to like the 18th round on DraftKings, and it really made it cozy there. I want to float one more guy who's also having an awesome preseason, and I'm happy that he is not quite rising quite to the extent of some of these other guys. Like it is funny how these things happen, right? Tank Bigsby is getting all the hype and having a good preseason, and boom, skyrockets up, right? Jaylen Warren, good preseason, getting hype, boom, skyrockets up. Tyjae Spears, from a dynasty perspective, is another guy. I actually drafted him yesterday in my dynasty league, where it's not that different from what we just talked about with Kendre. The big dog is not going to be a thing for that much longer. We don't know from a dynasty perspective when that will happen, but I also don't know. I'm not sure that we can fully say what the big dog is going to be this year off injuries and this insane workload, right? We talked about these other guys. Like I didn't expect it was over for Melvin Gordon last year, right? I didn't see that coming. I was drafting Melvin Gordon in the 12th round or whatever last season. And sometimes it just goes. And so the timing of Jesus Christ, if there is no big dog, right? Tyjae from a dynasty perspective in a year or 2 years, 3 years or whatever, you're like, oh baby, like that wheels up on that guy. And now again, in applying that to this season is like, yeah, pick 175 or whatever. Tyjae, it seems pretty good to me.
So this is a thing I think that the dynasty market sometimes gets wrong, of that, like, you know, wow, like the road is going to be clear for this, you know, middling pass catching running back prospect with one ACL. Like the road will not be clear. Like he'll probably be Michael Carter, and they'll bring in someone else immediately, and he'll turn back into dust. And that's why, like, if Tyjae Spears starts producing this year and you're like, oh my God, I did it. I hit a home run. Like I would recommend trading him for profit. Like when that window opens up, maybe, you know, use the points if you need the points and then trade him after that. But I think in a weird way, Spears is the kind of guy who's like a young back who is actually a better seasonal bet than a dynasty bet, especially if you're thinking about like holding. Like, it's a short-term bet is my point, because Derrick Henry turns 30 in January. So, I mean, the dude has a lot of, he has not really shown. A couple years ago, his rushing efficiency dropped, but he's held steady, and his receiving efficiency has been really good. So still reason to believe that he can kind of do the Derrick Henry thing, get going, and be an absolute nightmare to bring to the ground, right? But he's going to have to do that on a massive carry workload. I don't see any reason to suspect the Titans will shift away from kind of Titans ball. And so you're looking at maybe 22, 23 carries per game. You know, the chances that we see 17 games from Derrick Henry don't strike me as all that high. So now you get a chance to take Tyjae Spears, who wouldn't get the Derrick Henry workload, but would be like a starting running back on a run-first team and has pass-catching ability. What happens to this guy who, again, does not have an ACL in one of his knees in a year from now is like, I have no idea. Maybe he's dust. Maybe it's just that nice 3-game stretch that we'll look back fondly on. But like that can win you a lot of money. And he's been someone that I want to say in July, I was like, what are you doing, man? You're not being aggressive with this dude who's behind a running back who is such an obvious spot where things could open up, like contingency-based play. Like, this is the obvious.
I still think there's trade risk with Henry too.
Yeah, there's trade risk too.
I still think there's like, if I would say what is the most likely skill player to be traded in season in the NFL, like Derrick Henry would be my guess, just because he, like, if the Titans are a train wreck, and I think they're less likely to be a train wreck post Hopkins, but I still think it's pretty possible. Like, Henry has the type of name value where I think a team would be willing to hand them a pick. And he's like a symbolic like rebuild gesture for the Titans. Like, it's not over 50%, but I think it's like still something. It's something you add to the injury.
In Dynasty, we talk about, you know, how it's sometimes easier to make these moves, and you kind of talk yourself into like trading for a guy in season to kind of get over the hump or whatever. And I wonder if these NFL teams might be willing to do that too. Of like, hey, we need to make sure that we actually, you know, are showing the fans we're taking this seriously. We unexpectedly have a shot. We're going to get Derrick Henry, and it's like fanfare, you know, where or maybe
the fans. If your team trades for Derrick Henry and like you have like middling running back play, the fans are gonna, you're definitely gonna get the support of the fans. That is for sure.
Yeah, if you're like in the wild card hunt and your running game's like sputtering and you trade for Derrick Henry, like that is, you just added another year to your GM tenure.
Yeah, that is definitely true. The other thing that's really interesting. So what you said, like, obviously I stupidly became known for Darrington Evans, right? He was one of my bit guys, but then exactly what you said, I was like, it's like I had forgotten that at the beginning, like in May. Like the thesis of Darrington Evans is now the thesis of Tyjae Spears. Like it's the same thing. It's
even have the same Tyjae, number, don't they? Doesn't he wear 32?
I believe they do both. They both had 32. Also, Darrington's still kicking around in preseason, soon to be professional YouTube streamer, I think. Darrington, but still hanging on for a couple more weeks in the NFL. But I'm like, it was just kind of like shiny new toy. You know, the new draft cycle starts over, and we all got, you know, like I see Kendre and I see, you know, all you see all this shit going on, and then you start doing the drafts, and I got partway into it, and I'm like, I was drafting Darrington Evans on every team. You know, granted, it was like 18th round versus whatever Tyjae is like a 14th, 15th round pick. But like tangibly, who gives a shit about that difference? And I'm like, I was drafting Darrington Evans for this thesis on every single team until he rose to where I thought he should go. And I have taken none of this guy, who's probably an even better bet. I know he doesn't have an ACL, but I think Tyjae might be better than Darrington Evans, certainly as a runner. And I'm like, what was I doing? And so he, to me, has been like more than Kendre, more than this, where I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're already making a big bet against Derrick Henry. Like, I don't really draft Derrick Henry. So why don't you like win when that bet comes? Like, actually win. Don't just like not lose. You should try to win. Win. The other last thing, remember like Dontrell Hilliard games? Remember like, I'm trying to think of other, like,
who's
Derrick
not there, by the way. He's gone.
Yeah, right. He's gone. Derrick Henry does not play every snap. Like, Derrick Henry actually doesn't play particularly close to any snap.
Jeremy McNichols, I believe, was the name you were looking for.
Right. These other guys pop up. Like Dontrell Hilliard had multi-touchdown games.
every single person that you're.
Yes,
Nichols, I love.
These Dontrell Hilliard was like a core part of my DraftKings strategy last year, and it was really fun
Yeah,
when
I
he had a
ton
couple
of them, and he had useful weeks. Yeah,
he helped me like advance teams and everything, and I'm just like, so why doesn't Tyjae scoop up 2 or 3 usable weeks, even while Derrick Henry is there, and then down the stretch, this is like the best pick in all of best ball, right?
Why am we taking Tyjae Spears after Tyler Algier or Damian Harris or Elijah Mitchell at this point? But Tyler Algier is someone I'm actually still like totally fine taking. I'm nervous about those guys because I'm like, are we sure that they're RB2s? But Algier, we know. I'm down to talk about those guys as well. But with Algier, like I know he's the RB2 for sure. But at the end of the season, my bet is against Bijan Robinson or Derrick Henry, which sounds better, And like, I've seen Algier. I know he's going to get more rushing work. He's a big dude. He can get used to the goal line. Like, I would prefer to bet on Tyler Algier than Tyjae Spears as a player. But I mean, I would strongly prefer to bet against Derrick Henry in week 15, 16, 17, even though he plays the Texans twice, as Davis is not here. So he would remind us that the schedule.
Yeah, but Tyjae plays the Texans twice. And
Tyjae also
plays the Texans twice. Yeah.
I think this is one of those things where like the market. Okay, there's like 2 markets, I think, almost, right? Like kind of I was talking before. There's like the people that kind of draft the way we do, and then there's like other people who are in our drafts. And like the other people who are in our drafts are going to be like more predisposed to thinking Tyjae is the backup and not looking beyond that, because I just don't think that they go like that into the minutia of like, this guy's the long down and distance back and this guy's the short down and distance back.
Right.
But then also those people are going to be less inclined to like trust a rookie running back. Whereas the people who are like really into the minutia, but more inclined to trust a rookie running back, like very much me, were like, yeah, this guy's probably has like a reasonable standalone role, like the Dontrell Hilliard role, but he's kind of undersized. And like, what if Hassan Haskins or Julius Chestnut is like actually the early down handcuff? And that was kind of like, you had these 2 different concerns from 2 different groups of drafters that both kept his ADP stationary. And then I think that the first level concern, like that, is he actually the handcuff? I think that's no longer a concern. Like I think we now know pretty definitively, like he is the handcuff. And I think the reason why his ADP hasn't jumped up massively is because the other people that were less likely to draft him already assumed he was the handcuff, so they're not reacting to anything new. And then we should probably react to that and draft him like way higher. I should probably move him like substantially up my ranks.
I moved him up substantially in my ranks. I'm only at 9% on Underdog. Thankfully, I'm at 17 on DraftKings, where he's both cheaper and a better play for the PPR thing. But he's someone like I've continued. I don't know why this is, but I've had to continually remind myself that Tyjae Spears has a shitload of upside, and I think maybe it's the knee, and the worry there, and just like, and that he's a smaller passing down back kind of archetype.
From
Tulane, he really popped in my rookie running back model.
He is electric. He is super explosive.
He is, but all of his comps were like Duke Johnson and DeAndre
he was
Washington.
17, DeAndre Washington. Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's all the guys like I've missed on in the past that like I were like, oh, if you just give this guy a chance, and the NFL teams were like, fuck you for even wanting to get a chance. He never will. and you know what I mean? So I'm just like kind of a little bit beaten down, I think, on this particular archetype. But like, God, it's maybe this time it'll work. I don't know.
This is one of those where I love talking to you guys about these kinds of players, because you guys do, a shit ton more in depth and sophisticated and just frankly intelligent, prospect modeling and diving into all that. And I'm just like, played him in college football DFS. He goes Burr, give me that guy. But like
your track record on that's pretty good though.
But I do feel like generally speaking, when you end up like watching a bunch of Tulane because you're gambling on it or whatever, it was like I feel like the hit rate on the guys who stand out as outliers in that regard, right? It's not like I watched him and so like Deuce Vaughn, like I played Deuce Vaughn more than Tyjae Spears in college football DFS because Deuce Vaughn got the ball 25 fucking times a game at Kansas State. It's the Big 12. He was their leading receiver, right? It was a cheat code, but I'm not really like, but I watched how explosive he is. I'm not a moron, but I'm not like really bullish on it. But then you watch Tyjae and you're just like, holy shit, man. Like this dude is like, is as electric as Deuce Vaughn is, a little bit bigger. So at least there's something there. I actually kind of think he's a better, even like big play runner than Deuce is more. I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, I think it's part like our mind plays tricks on us when the dude is 5'5" and 170
He's Tariq
pounds.
Cohen, right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Like he's very much jitterbug. Like, and Tyjae is very, but Tyjae is like electric in like I don't want to comp him to this, but like the way Bijan is electric, like it's smooth, it's explosive, whatever. He's not like, stopping on dimes necessarily. And like you said, jitterbugging guys like Tariq Cohen is jitterbug. Tony.
Yeah, I mean, the move that he did
know?
in that run up the middle was similar to kind of the Bijan missed tackle move, where it's sort of like just like moves his leg out of the way and keeps going.
Yeah,
which so I get stylistically what you're saying.
It helps because he does that because maybe Bijan doesn't have ACLs. Have we checked into that? That's why they're both doing that, because there's no ACLs in there. That's the only reason they can defy logic. But anyway, Tyjae was one of those guys for me, right? It was like you stumble into these guys who you're like, I think they're better. I just think that they're better. Is the hit rate going to be awesome? Of course, of course not. But it had, like you said, I comp it from like my process. It's not positionally, but it was like Bailey Zappi. I was like, I don't really like Mac Jones. I don't think Mac Jones is very good. And like, we were like thinking through like, how do we take darts on Superflex guys? I was like, I don't know. I think this Bailey Zappi dude's actually kind of like good. He certainly seems like a Patriot in terms of like the point guard distributor type thing. I'm like, I don't know. Mac Jones is the roadblock. And I think Bailey Zappi is good. Right. And it's like Tyjae, same thing. I'm like, I don't know. I think this dude is good. And Derrick Henry is the roadblock. Like that seems pretty good to me as a bet,
Yeah, I mean, I think Spears, I think he's like a way better best ball pick than a dynasty pick. Just like
I like that.
Fits the archetype of like and I think he will be for his entire career. Like I think he fits like this archetype just so perfectly of like dynasty running back that you should trade for a 2 years out first round pick the second that you get that chance, just because he ran a 4.59 and he's 203 pounds. He like has an okay pass catching profile, but not on a ton of routes. Like he looks so like Devin Singletary, Michael Carter-y, CEH-y, like this kind of tweener back that is just, they're always useful to NFL teams. They like have long NFL careers. He'll be on rosters. He'll be used in the game. Like he'll never just be a straight handcuff. He'll have a role, but like, he's like a quintessential guy where it's like he'll start for a month and then they'll bring in another back the next season.
Chase Edmonds would come to mind.
Chase Edmonds, yeah, like because he's not like, because the problem is like he's small and he's very good, but he doesn't really have like that trump card trait that small running backs usually need to become actual like RB1s in fantasy. Like they either need to be usually really fast, or they need to be elite pass catchers, or they need to be like just really outlier like volume runners. And I don't think Spears is any of that, but I think he's like definitely an NFL player, and I think he'll perpetually be a guy who you want to have on zero RB teams. Like Kenny Gainwell would be like an example of a guy where it's like, I don't think Kenny Gainwell will ever be a difference-making dynasty asset. We'll be drafting Kenny Gainwell in best ball for another 4 years. Like I think he's going to continue to be like a relevant player.
I actually think sometimes these guys get undervalued in dynasty. Like Zach Charbonnet, when he landed with the Seahawks, everyone's like, oh. I was like, no. Like you will be drafting Zach Charbonnet every year in redraft for the next 4 years. You will. And you're never going to want Zach Charbonnet from me in March, and you're going to laugh when I try to trade him for a rookie pick right before the draft, but I'm going to trade him to you one of these Octobers. I am, or maybe even in August, maybe even in one of these Augusts.
But I like it. I like it because you should know when you're starting Zach Charbonnet, right? Yeah. It's like, should be pretty goddamn clear when you're starting Zach Charbonnet, and when that situation comes through when you are starting him, Ken Walker in week 2 blows out his knee, right? And so Charbonnet is going to look amazing, kind of like Ken Walker did coming into this year, right? Chris Carson goes away, Ken Walker goes away, so now you have Zach Charbonnet. Are you going to get an unbelievable dynasty asset for him? No, because Ken Walker does still exist, right? But like there is going to be a potential window to, if you want to get out from him, right? It's not going to be like, oh my God, the sky's falling, Trey Lance, please God, someone just take him from me so I can get the hell out of here. It's like, there's going to be somebody out there that is like because he's going to have a big year if there's no Ken Walker, right? The Seahawks look awesome. I mean, the offense looks incredible. Like, are you going to, is he ever going to get you, a top, a super, super top first round pick? No, of course not. But it's an asset because, like you said, you're always going to be drafting him in redraft.
Yeah.
That value never totally goes away, right? It never goes away on those guys. Whereas a lot of guys, it definitely goes away, on those guys. Obviously older players, but even just certain archetypes, it goes away like quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Yeah, I mean, players look at rookies, like dynasty players, basketball players, whatever, like all fantasy players, I think, like often just forget object permanence when they look at certain rookies, where it's just like, it's like if it doesn't happen the first year, like this person no longer exists. Like it's like, or we see a little bit of something where they look at a depth chart and it's like Tyjae Spears, like the only thing in front of him and the only thing that ever will be in front of him is Derrick Henry. And like once Derrick Henry's no longer in front of him, like he is the starting running back for eternity. Like, and then it flips. Like I remember last.
Yeah, there's no middle ground. There's no middle ground.
People would say these crazy things about Zamir White in August. It would be like I'm investing in Zamir White because Jacobs is only there for 1 year, and then it's Zamir White's backfield. And it's like, okay, even if we assume that Jacobs will only be there,
has that ever worked?
It says who is it Zamir White's backfield? Like
it's never worked.
It worked with Alexander Madison, maybe. It might work with
I guess it worked with Alexander Madison. It actually did work with Alexander Madison.
But it might work. Like it currently projects to work.
Pollard,
right.
But like Alexander Madison might lose his job by week 5. Pollard stole the job. He didn't just
Pollard took the job. That's what
he just took.
The bet has to be he's taking the job. That's a different bet. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Ben Tate. Remember Ben Tate? It was always as soon as they're in college, it was Ben Tate. He's gonna be
right, like the player who patiently waits in the wings like until his number is called at the deli counter. Like it never happens, right? Like and it's like Khalil Shakir was like last year was like, just you wait, like it'll be his turn. And it's like,
wait, so you're telling me Sky Moore's not a good pick then?
Sky Moore, yeah. Just needed
Sky Moore's playing a 2 wide receiver set pick.
I need to speak to my lawyer.
It's happening this year.
But like that's how we do this all the time. And yeah, Sky Moore is the dynasty. Realistically, if we were talking about like guys who dynasty should teach you are horrible best ball picks this year, like it should be Sky Moore, but I'd take him.
Well, it's a price thing, right? It's like one of those things where
it's also a Priors thing for me.
It's a Priors thing too. Yeah, I was in on Sky Moore, but but like it's funny because like some guys just get, it's like second year. The object permanence thing is funny because some guys it's almost like early in the off season. The idea that they could have like any value at all as a second year player after a bad rookie season is like mocked. It's like ridiculous that you would think that they could possibly recover from a bad rookie season when we see players all the time recover from bad rookie seasons and put up value, even if it's not amazing, even if it's like Nico Collins' second year, which was like not anything to write home about, but like he was rivaling Brandon Cooks for targets at one point, Yeah, it was useful.
Chalk on every DFS slate because he was $4,000 and projected for 8 targets or whatever. Yeah, that's useful. If you get that at a cheap price, that's useful.
It's useful, yeah. So that was like when Sky Moore was going in the 13th round or whatever. Like that's when he made a lot of sense. I have to admit, I sometimes got a little nervous because of the Rashee Rice pick and didn't completely load up at that price. And now I have taken a little bit more since the price rose. I don't think I'm gonna chase him into the 7th, but there's like, I would say Alec Pierce is a guy that I've drafted a lot of this year.
Yeah.
It's just like he earned a role right away. And he's like, it reminds me a little bit of the Gabe Davis bet, not from last year, but the year before, when it kind of hit at the very end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
except Alec Pierce is the starter.
He's the starter. Yeah. There's no Emmanuel Sanders he has to overcome. So it's almost like last year's Gabriel Davis bet. Yeah, well, I take Downs too because I think he is the starter in the slot. But anyway, I mean, there's certain guys. Zamir White, I think, is an example. Like when Zamir White was completely free, I wasn't sure he was the RB2, and now that he is the RB2, I'm like, okay,
right.
I'm in on that. Kyrenn Williams is someone that I continually sort of just draft through it on because everyone thinks it's disgusting, and he didn't do anything as a rookie. He had a high ankle.
Why doesn't he go up? Is he undrafted in every?
I talked him up, and by talking him up, I meant you should draft this guy in round 18. To be clear, I'm not like a Kyrenn Williams truther.
He goes round 20.
I strongly advocated for him as a good best ball pick in the Hitchhiker's Guide.
So I think he's. I actually have not hammered him yet, particularly on underdog because I have one less round to take guys. I'm at 5% on DraftKings. I would like to be at like 10%, I think, and as a guy who doesn't always get drafted, that's more like 15-18%, right? Maybe
I take him a ton on DraftKings.
I'm going to start
30% on DraftKings.
You're at 30%?
No, I said I'd like to be. I just have barely drafted on DraftKings. I'm going to hammer it in an obscene degree these 2 weeks, but I would like to be for sure.
I'm in. I also
I like Zach Evans as a prospect, but the fact that Zach Evans is still today like behind Ronnie Rivers and Royce Freeman is like, and I've actually liked what I've seen from Zach Evans in the preseason games, but clearly he's just not having like the type of camp that he needs to create, the type of inertia that he needs to create. So if you take him out of the equation, then nobody else is a threat to Kyrenn Williams. Because like my case against Kyrenn Williams would be like he is too small and slow to be a handcuff back, so he's really just a standalone guy. But if it's really like him or Royce Freeman or like the bastard from the Riverlands, then sure. Like why not? Why can't it be Kyrenn Williams?
The other thing is that I think, okay, we talked about DeAndre Washington and Duke Johnson, and if you play Dynasty for a long time, you're just like constantly beaten over the head with being wrong, because we have to go and get these bets. We have to take these like in best ball, we stop after 18 or 20 rounds. Like we don't have to go and do like the deep dive profiles on, these random day 3 running backs who we like start to fall in love with and we think they're going to be something. And like, you're like, I don't know, man. I think Treston Ebner's a little interesting. Like right. you do that in Dynasty, and then it continually you're like, oh, I'm an idiot. Jamar Jefferson, it's like that's a guy we were kind of interested. There's a million. Boy,
don't name search my tweets about Jamar Jefferson. Fuck.
Exactly.
Those are embarrassing.
It's endless. Like but you also, I think, can be overconfident in certain data points the other way. And I think the RAS scores are pretty helpful, but Devontae Freeman had a 2.34 RAS score. I think either 2.34 or 2.96. My spreadsheet's a little off.
Former RB1 in fantasy, Devontae Freeman.
Yeah,
for anybody
former RB1 in fantasy. Yeah.
Like overall, like not RB1,
the
RB1.
The RB1. Yeah. Ramondre Stevenson was at 3.98 when he came in. There's been several of these guys who have actually like overcome. Oh, Devin Singletary had a horrendous RAS score. He's at 1.65. James Conner was at 4.53. Dalvin Cook was at 4.65. Kyrenn Williams is at 3.47, which is not good. But like the idea that this dude who's getting rested as like a co-starter with Cam Akers, who's been like getting reps with the ones during minicamp, was clearly the running back 2 throughout all of training camp, has been rested. I said co-starter. I don't actually believe that. I think he's the number 2. But he looks locked in as the number 2.
He's a legitimate role player. He has a role in the base.
He has a role. Yes, he has a role in the Rams offense. They are resting him. We have never not had an indication that was the case this entire offseason. Schefter tweeted out last week that he was going to be playing him in his War Room League because he thought the Rams wanted to use him a lot, and then he gets a high ankle sprain on special teams, and we never really see a healthy snap from him. I don't want to get carried away, because if Kyrenn Williams was like a 15th round pick, I'd be like gross. But like, as a 19th round pick,
I'm kind of getting carried. I'm kind of getting carried away.
No, I'll get carried away. I mean, we see this all the time with these running backs, and the Dynasty lens through it is interesting, because like we get all these rookies, and it's like we go through this phase every year where like all of the backup running backs that like have only ever been backup running backs, it's like out of sight, out of mind for people. When Zeke goes and signs somewhere, everybody's like, oh my God, Ezekiel Elliott's this team. It's like, what am I going to do? It's like, he's no different than every other backup shit running back in the NFL. But we forget those guys exist. We forget that they exist like so much. Like, again, they literally lose object permanence for us, such that like when Chase Brown goes in the 5th round, like all of like the community is like, he's clearly the backup. Like there's no possible way that this 5th round pick out of Illinois could possibly not be the RB2 in Cincinnati this year. We got to draft him in the 14th round. So it's goofy, but like what usually happens to these late guys is we're just like drafting like a profile that might be interesting if fortune ever smiles on them one day. And sometimes it does smile on them in year 1, but most of the time it doesn't. Most of the time it's like what's happening with the Bengals now, where like Travion Williams and Chris Evans, who were like these day 3 running back sleepers of yesteryear and 5 years ago, like now might have fortune favor them at some point, where like there's a shitty running back ahead of them who has legal problems and doesn't play on third downs. And there's a new running back who just got drafted who I guess has not enamored anybody quite yet, for a team that always slow plays their rookie running backs. Every single year they slow play these guys. So why was he going to be different? And yeah, it's probably going to favor them. And it's interesting to look at through these profiles, like who can take on this work. Like it looks like the injury might have it going against me, because man, was I filling up some Trevion Williams
I know
exposures.
That he got hurt,
but
I don't know. I think he's still got potential to be.
I still think he's still live. But it's the same thing with these Rams players, right? Like the Kyrenn Williams, that stuff, like the reasons why you're a little bit interested on a low probability bet from a day 3 pick, they don't actually go away. Like the fact that Kyrenn Williams had this pass catching profile and showed an ability to handle a workload in college, like, it doesn't go away. Like that's still there. That's still part of the equation. It's still interesting. And I mean, is there any better backfield to take backups for than the Rams? Like the two things we know about Sean McVay is that in his perfect world, he would like to use one back and one back only. That's the one thing we know about him. And the second thing we know about him is that every time he gives that workload to a running back, he hates them 2 weeks later. Those are the two constants of Sean McVay. It's like,
and particularly Cam Akers.
Back. That's right. Like
he's never had a more up and down relationship with a running back than with Cam Akers.
Yeah, he's been in like a legitimately toxic relationship with this player for several years. Like, and it goes up and down.
He left the team. Yeah, Cam Akers left the team during the season because he was mad. He hated his role. And now he's back and assumed, and we're giving him the Najee Harris volume, and his backup does not get drafted. Now, I'm not saying Kyrenn is Jalen Warren, but I mean, there are not absurd parallels.
Well, here's the other. I was going to mention Jalen Warren, 4.8 RAS score, which is not good, right? Jamal Williams was another one that I didn't mention earlier, who was in this exact same range. Samaje Perine is another guy. He's at 4.9.
Kyrenn feels like a career Perine. Because
he's a Perine.
He's a career Perine guy. He's never going to be the guy, right? So you talked about the dynasty thing. When Cam Akers is gone, do not expect Kyrenn to just get gifted this workhorse role. But Kyrenn is always going to be Samaje Perine on a team, because guess what? He ain't going to be breaking away for a bunch of 80-yard touchdowns. I get it, and he's probably not going to be that successful even as a runner, but he's able to handle a workload. His size is totally fine. And he is a badass pass blocker and a good receiver. So that is valuable, man. Why has Rojo never stuck in the NFL? Because he can't do any of that. Great runner. We can hand you the rock and you're going to get 4.5 yards per carry, but you don't do all the shit that, matters. And Kyrenn does it. He doesn't do any of the stuff that's sexy, just like Perine doesn't. Perine doesn't do any of the stuff that's sexy, but he's going to catch the ball and he's going to protect his quarterback. And sometimes that's all we need, right? Because then you stumble into 18 carries and a couple goal line carries and poof, you get Perine of last season.
Yeah,
and if you want to talk about members of the 2019 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of them, Ronald Jones, is currently at risk of losing his place in the NFL. The other one, Dare Ogunbowale, is very safe in the NFL.
That's true. Yeah. That's sad but true. By the way, just real quick aside, because I have another actual point. But you're looking at some of these ESPN metrics that they rolled out, these receiver ratings, and one of the ways that you can check the running back rating is at least directionally accurate is that Ronald Jones' 2020 season is 196 out of 198 seasons ever recorded at running back. So the receiver ratings are picking up. Melvin Gordon is the only person worse, actually. He's tied with Carlos Hyde at 196, and then Melvin Gordon's the only worse. Melvin Gordon's 2020 season, the lowest recorded receiver season of all time. By
Carlos Hyde, Melvin Gordon, and Ronald Jones. That is a fucking trio.
It's picking up some signal.
Yes.
Miles Sanders, by the way, 192 in this list.
I was going to guess if he was last. Yeah, 3 down back, Miles Sanders. They said it.
Yeah, 3 down back. That's definitely going to work. Don't have any reservations about that.
Chuba, also another big faller when he sprained his ankle, and he's fine. Apparently now
Chuba's a big example of the object permanence theory. Like he came in, people were excited for him. He didn't pop right away. People forgot that he played in the National Football League. He was then the CMC thing, it was like, oh my God. And then he actually looked good last year. They signed Miles Sanders, one of the least imposing stand-in running backs. And once again, he people forgot he existed. He kind of came up in ADP, not enough for my taste, but yeah, I love Chuba Hubbard this year.
I think there's like a thing with Kyrenn where like, because the RAS score thing has been a little bit tilting to me because it gets like often like told to me as if I'm not aware he's super unathletic. I'm like, I know he's super unathletic. I'm aware of that.
Shit. Yeah, I drafted so much Kyrenn in like the 12th round of the big board because I was like, I don't know, he's going to run like 4.55 or something like that and go in the 3rd round or, you know, whatever. You know how the big boards are. And then I definitely know how unathletic he was because I pissed away hundreds of dollars the moment he tested at the combine. Like, I'm well aware I'm as athletic as that dude is.
Yeah. Oh, Tariq Cohen, by the way, 3.92 RAS score, another guy. You can just keep on finding these dudes who actually had a little. Alex Collins, 2.96. Was Alex Collins?
RIP.
Yeah, RIP Alex Collins. But you know, if you're looking for guys who can actually, you know, do something from these late rounds, but you're just focused on like the one thing you know about him, and that one thing's bad, right? I think that's what's happening with Williams. Like, we haven't seen him in the chat earlier because I was talking him up on ADP chasing. Someone pointed out that like him being rested with the starters has actually probably hurt his ADP because we haven't seen him.
That is a great
point.
You know, no one cares that Jaylen Warren is unathletic because he just housed a 60-yard touchdown and he actually plays well.
Yeah.
He's a good football player.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Kyrenn Williams appears to be a good football player too. He was productive in college. He has clearly earned a clear number 2 role with the Rams. They were excited about him last year a little bit, but we haven't really seen it. So we're like, yeah, but his RAS score sucks. So that's all we need to know. But it's not all we need to know, especially with this backup archetype. Who it's like, yeah, if you were saying Kyrenn Williams was going to be like an awesome 5th round pick because he's going to get all the Rams, it's 2024 and Akers is on a different team. And it's like, oh, we got to draft Kyrenn Williams. I'd be like, I don't know. He's pretty unathletic. You know, at that price, I'd be like,
right.
This seems like a thin bet for him to just like hold down the role and be awesome and like deliver the kind of running back season we're looking for from, you know, taking the risk on a guy in the 5th round. But it's like an 18th round pick. Like, I know he's unathletic and that doesn't bother me.
I mean, I think I keep this like
the Rams thing too. The Rams thing too was the only other thing I was just gonna add is like Jacob outlined. Like the Rams is this is a fucking glorious situation for like Malcolm Brown. Remember Malcolm Brown? I was drafting a shit ton of Malcolm Brown that season.
Human
2 touchdowns week 1, and that dude is horrible. Like if you think Kyrenn is bad, Malcolm Brown is horrible. And McVay was like, nope, I trust him. I trust him to pass protect, right? I trust him to just get me 2 yards when I call. You know, McVay's kind of very Shanahan-esque, right? He's you know, mad scientist in the offense and all.
He knows the position doesn't matter that much.
Malcolm Brown was the only running back in the NFL that wore a neck roll like last year, and it fit perfectly with his game. Like I saw that guy pull up with the neck roll right up here, and I was like, yes, like this guy would draft like a backup left guard because he plays like a backup left guard.
I think if I ever like got really big, I would just like start wearing the neck roll as a fashion statement.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. Actually, let's hope that does happen.
So I wanted to quickly touch on like for my running back rankings, and shout out to we'll have to do an update on those, by the way, the old consensus dynasty leg up rankings.
People are asking for an update actually, so we should do an update.
We'll have to group together and figure out who's doing the next update or if we're all doing anyway. But in my running back ranking specifically, I have like all these different color-coded tiers that's based off of what I used to do for Bulletproof, which was just called the shitty bench running backs tier list. And basically I break down like all of these backs into these different archetypes. And some of them change year to year. And then some of them basically stay with that player ideally for their whole career, unless I just decide that my evaluation of them was wrong. But like at the top end on the production, you know, we have classic like legend, star, starter, streamer, bench, etc. But in terms of like what they are, I have like each player gets an asset class, depending on which is either like their generational asset, a core asset, speculative asset, or an upside asset, and I go into all the traits. And then they get a contingent value classification, which sticks with them ideally forever, which is either what I call the French cuff, which is player who demonstrates or projectively possesses skills necessary to provide star level production on a contingent basis. Handcuff, so just like your classic, like come in, take the 15 carries and 2 targets. Cuff Links, which is a player who fits an early down hammer role or a satellite back role, but has kind of systemic limitations to growing beyond that. So like that kind of is your Kyrenn, where he's like a little smaller, less athletic, but he like has a projectable role, or off the cuff, which is just any running back on a 53-man roster. And like these kind of stick with them, and it just sort of describes who these players are. And then my hope is like between players who have similarly projected roles in a given season, like I'm always targeting these specific types, the ones that have more room to grow. Like I wrote that big piece on my site called Running Backs Are Balloons. And we talked about the idea of like, are running backs like gases, right? Like, can they grow to fill the available space? And like some can more than the others. And when we're talking about these backup running backs, like from that long view, college into the NFL lens, like I always want to be filling my benches and the back of my best ball rosters with the running backs who can grow to fill the available space.
Yeah, that's so true. And the dynasty conversation around it is so interesting because it's not always like a lot of the times dynasty and how, not even just like how dynasty players play necessarily, but how people think about dynasty very much. And what, I mean, frankly, that's what happened in the beginning of best ball season was everybody gravitated to Zach Evans, right? It's like we haven't seen anything from Kyrenn. He certainly does not seem like an appealing asset as a talent. And they got this new guy, and Zach Evans was a big time recruit, really talented back. Although there's something definitely wrong with Zach Evans. I have no idea what it is, if it's a personality issue or there's some, a knowledge-based issue or whatever, but he was at TCU before Kendre and was known as like one of the best high school running back prospects, like almost ever. And when he got on the field at TCU was awesome, but they just
he was number 2 in the class, I believe.
But they just never,
Bijan, guy.
He never got to play. Like he was like just a committee back with Kendre and with these other guys at TCU, and it never made any sense as to why he couldn't.
And his
play.
advanced stats were awesome, like
amazing,
inexplicable. He was the best back on the team that had another NFL back on the team, like pretty decisively.
Transfers to Ole Miss to go play for Lane Kiffin, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, if you know anything about Ole Miss and the way Lane Kiffin running backs
I was
produce,
so excited.
You're just thinking, oh my God, this dude's going to run for like 2,000 yards. Goes there. Obviously, he was fine last season. Loses the job. Basically becomes Quinshon Judkins' backup by the end of the season. Who, look, it's being the backup to a really good young player is not like a bad thing, but it's just like every step of the way, man, with Zach Evans, and we just get enamored with that shiny new guy. Like you said, there's nothing else established there, right? Travion Williams is a totally unappealing asset. So if they got Chase Brown, we got to chase Chase Brown, right? Kyrenn Williams, totally unappealing asset. So we got to chase Zach Evans, right? And it's like most of the time that shit never works.
Williams.
Yeah. And it's always
Travion Williams, Daryl Williams, Kyrenn Williams, Jamal Williams.
Yeah, apparently put that in your
fucking model. That's my process. I just draft.
You got to just draft running backs named Williams and wide receivers named Brown and more. And you can get your 2-5-9-2 just off that.
Not more. Not more last year in particular, Elijah. And,
we're going back to the well on Mims. We'll see. We'll let you know how that one turns out.
Yeah, right, for sure.
Mims already got cut, eh?
Yeah.
Marvin Mims.
Marvin Mims.
Oh, no, Denzel Mims was already released.
No, he's already released. No, that one didn't work officially. We're trying again this year with Marvin. Well, I wanted to ask Jakob.
I'm really upset you got a clip on him, by the way. I had to move him down a round in my ranks after you introduced the clip.
Sorry. Hey, I'm gonna feel it as bad as anyone. I have a ton of them.
Starting in 3 wide receiver sets. It's all good.
I want to ask about, because we spent a lot of time on Kyrenn, who's become kind of like a guy like, sometimes I worry, like, I should probably shut up about this guy because he's not actually that talented. And you called him, a cuff link, where he's like, if you talk about like the idea of how much of the available space can he actually fill, like probably not that much, but some. But like, are there guys to you, Jacob, first, second year, third year guys, or just kind of under the radar guys going late that you do think could fill a bunch of the available space?
Yeah, well, I wrote about one of them. One of my favorite ones, Keontay Ingram. That was the prospect that I really liked coming out, like pre-draft. He was one of my favorite under the radar guys in that class. And what I look for the under the radar running backs primarily is like, I call them my competent plotters, which is I look for guys who are able to execute the scheme of the offense. And one of the best things with Keontay Ingram coming out of college was he had a 97th percentile chunk rate, which is it's Noah Hill's term for the metric, but it's conversion of runs into 10 plus yards. Had a really low percentage of converting 10-yard runs into 20 plus yard runs, but he was consistently able to churn out chunks. And then also had like, Noah has this incredible database of like all these different metrics that compare him versus the performance of his teammates. But he played next to Roschon Johnson. He played next to Bijan Robinson, and then he goes to USC. And outside of Bijan Robinson, like he was pretty consistently more efficient than the average of the running backs on his team, even when you adjust for box counts, both overall and especially on a success rate basis and on a chunk rate basis. So he was consistently churning out positive yardage compared to a pretty talented group of teammates, and also has 3 seasons over 20 college receptions. So I don't think he's like a dynamic receiver or anything, but I think he can, catch the ball if it happens to fall into his hands. So he kind of fit everything that I wanted, where he looked like that type of running back where if someone gets hurt, they can just hand the ball and he can execute the scheme the way it's supposed to go. Didn't happen last year, which was concerning, but also Cliff Kingsbury's a total idiot. So you never know. He was like a guy I didn't want to get super invested in, because I was like, if he's not actually the 2 and he plays in the Cardinals, like that just seems like a great way to burn money. But it seems like he's clearly the 2 now. Like he played 4 snaps with the starters to James Conner's 11. There's really nobody else in that backfield anyway. So that's a guy that I think if Conner, and you also kind of get a lot of fun with that, where not just if Conner gets hurt, but like the Cardinals have no incentive to like give James Conner the type of workload we project in week 1 anywhere close to the late season, where if Ingram shows them anything, like they can just be like, play it as a timeshare, or
they could shut Conner down at the end of the year and be like, what do you got, kid?
For fake reasons. Yeah. So I think like Ingram's a talent that I think is like interesting, and I think he fits this like mold of guys who I think can grow to the available space. So he was a guy with mixing in before, and since that preseason game, he's now become a priority click for me.
All right, I like that one.
Can I pitch you one? I want to get on this exact same idea. Yeah. A guy who I was drafting quite a bit for a couple different reasons. One, not necessarily dynasty related, but kind of like the Kyrenn thing, where sometimes the market really reacts to news that we're getting, right? Like, okay, this guy is so like, I like the Tank Bigsby, right? The market has reacted hard to the Tank Bigsby thing. And like, I actually kind of like Tank Bigsby and wanted to like really have a bunch of him. And I'm not gonna probably have as much as I want in best ball specifically, but
I'll be probably underweight. I'm at 9% now, so I'll probably be underweight.
Right. I think I'm about even with the field, and it's tougher to get him.
I'm at 12, but it'll be fading. But he was my most drafted rookie in the whole 2023 class in Dynasty draft. So I'll get my exposure there.
But like, right, the drumbeat is absurd from Doug Peterson on Bigsby, and then he goes out and looks awesome in the preseason. So he's rising, whatever. That's fine. But we have all this Colts shit going on, right? And we even had it with Josh Jacobs, right? So Josh Jacobs is nowhere to be found. We find out Zamir White is the backup. He rises. Jonathan Taylor is not around, and seems like I'm not saying him and Jacobs and these guys are a risk, but I don't feel awesome.
Oh, I know where you're going, and I love it.
Jacobs did not request a trade. He's just pissed that he didn't get money. JT's pissed about not getting, and he doesn't want to be on the team, and the owner is shitting on him on social media. It all feels pretty bad, basically, is what I'm saying in Indy.
Yeah, and he just lost $20 million on a dead whale.
Yeah. And then we get reports. So Zach Moss breaks his arm. And who's running with the ones? Evan Hull. It's not Deion Jackson. It actually wasn't Zach Moss even before he broke his arm, but whatever. We get confirmation. Evan Hull is then getting all the snaps with the starters during the preseason. And I know they don't look good, so he's not popping like Tank is or whatever. But every indication is like, this is the guy. It's also a new regime. They drafted him. They did not draft Deion Jackson. They certainly did not pick up the corpse of Zach Moss during, Jeff Saturday picked up Zach Moss. And no one gives a shit about Evan Hull. And it's like the same thing. I could see a lot of paths to, does JT want to play? Does JT want to play all the snaps down the stretch? This team is not going to be very good. Who's going to be getting the ball down the stretch? It ain't Zach Moss. And if JT isn't out there, like, this guy feels to me like a last round guy who's not getting picked, who is very clearly this backup. I kind of think he can be that guy that ends up filling up all the space, because he feels like a more well-rounded Isaiah Pacheco of a profile to me. Comes from a
better receiver.
Horrible fucking disaster program in Northwestern. I mean, even like in a lot of ways, a disaster of a program. He was the offense. That was it. They could not move the ball unless it was him. And as you mentioned, the thing that he does better than Pacheco is he's actually a really good receiver. He's really explosive. He has tested well. He's got good size. I can't really figure out, basically, is what I'm saying, like why we're pushing up everybody else, but not this guy who seems to really fit exactly what you were talking about.
Evan Hall to me is a carbon copy of Eno Benjamin as a prospect, and that
that one.
Has like all of the like superficial metrics covered that we want. Has the workload. Probably isn't actually good. Like the qualitative metrics don't shine quite as nice of a light on him, but he has all of the base competencies to fill in.
The issue that I have with Hall is, so Nathan Yankee, his recap of the second game, he noted that Deion Jackson started after Hall had started week 1.
I didn't see that. So
he's received all the snaps in the first drive and began the second drive, he said. So then Hall started rotating in early on the second drive. So for me, it's as simple as I'm not sure he's the backup, but he's someone that like he's very athletic. He's very versatile. If I knew for sure he was the clear backup, I would be way more interested in him than like a Kyrenn Williams. Well, I guess I get to bet against Cam Akers instead of JT, but contracts. JT. Yeah. So, but kind of all those little nuances aside, like he would be a more interesting pure contingent play to me than Kyrenn Williams. But this year I've been trying to just have a higher hit rate on drafting guys who are actually the backup.
And
I have been drafting Evan Hall. I've been mixing him in. I'm a little concerned about the Deion Jackson stuff, but
because I think Deion Jackson's kind of good. I think
he's okay.
I think he's good. Yeah. I think he's a good pass catcher. I don't think he does much on the ground, but I think he's a good pass catcher for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Evan Hall could be the backup, and he could be the complement. I was kind of excited when they signed Kenyon Drake because I thought that might signal Deion Jackson as a cut risk. But then Kenyon Drake's like been barely getting any play with the one, so I think Kenyon Drake is just a camp body, and he's going to get cut. So I think it'll probably be Hall, Jackson, Moss starts on IR, and Taylor would be my guess. But I'm interested in Hall. He fits all the archetype stuff that I'm looking for. Colts organizationally are like the team you want to take day 3 rookies and UDFAs on because they will play them. It's like an organizational commitment almost, where Chris Ballard like loves giving his young guys a shot. He won't block them. They're starting 2 rookie cornerbacks this year. I believe everyone except for DeForest Buckner that is in their projected starting lineup was drafted by the Indianapolis Colts or signed by the Indianapolis Colts as a UDFA. And I'm pretty sure that 8 of their 22 starters are either first or second year players. So this is like a full-on youth movement. They have day 3 and UDFA signings all over the roster. They've had success with them, and they like to grow them and nurture them. So I think if Evan Hall shows something, he can win that backup spot on merit. I know they brought in Kareem Hunt for a visit. I think that the people have said, like, if Jonathan Taylor does hold out or is traded, like, they'll for sure sign someone. I think they might sign someone, but it would be against type for Ballard. I think if they sign someone, that's a Jim Irsay call. Chris Ballard does not like to block guys like this. I think he would let Hall and Deion Jackson sort it out with like Zach Moss, Kenyon Drake type like placeholders.
Great. Awesome. That's awesome stuff.
That's my Colts fan perspective on it.
And I will also add to just your point about the Colts defense. This is my favorite thing that we do in best ball. People come right. So like we just talked about Derrick Henry and the Titans, and they play the Texans, right? So everybody just uses historical defensive data or what we've seen in the last however many years and assumes this coming season those are going to be the best matchups, right? But like the Texans have gotten demonstrably better on defense.
It's hard to tackle dudes in those jerseys, man.
No, that is true. That is definitely true.
A simple fact.
But like, one team got rid of all their good players and is trotting out a bunch of young, probably not very good players on defense. The other one added the best defender in this draft, the best defender in the SEC for 2 straight seasons, and a bunch of other pretty talented players to go with other past first round NFL draft picks, right? And so I'm not projecting the Texans to be like an awesome defense, but the Colts defense is going to be worse than the Texans defense.
I've already started building my Trevor Lawrence stacks for week 1. The Colts are, I guarantee you, they will have the worst secondary in the NFL by a lot. They are starting Julian Blackmon, who is like off Achilles, lost his job last year, UDFA Rodney Thomas, and 2 rookie cornerbacks, and Kenny Moore. Like they lost Gilmore. Rodgers got suspended for gambling. So it's just like they're starting a day 3 rookie in week 1.
Yeah, but so that just to that point, I know that's not a dynasty take necessarily, although player turnover, I guess, a little bit. But people do the defense stuff and they get really foaming at the mouth over week 17 matchups. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to think about who's on the team this year. Like it's not just about the Texans from 3 years ago. It's like the Colts. The Colts is like the juiciest matchup on the board, which is the only thing that they're keeping.
What a waste of a playoff schedule. They get the Steelers week 15, the Falcons week 16, and the Raiders week 17.
Raiders. Yeah, what a letdown.
Yeah, a lot more fun
Michael Mayer. It's Michael Mayer.
I'm drafting the Raiders passing game because I think the Colts are going to be a run funnel. Their front 7 is still good. That secondary sucks. Devontae Adams is going to have 250 yards.
Oh, pass funnel. You're going to be pass funnel.
Yes.
Devontae got to be out there after this disaster of Josh Jacobs and Devontae.
I'm into that.
On an island with Will Fuller somewhere by the time week 17 gets around, I think, for McDaniels.
I think I'm overweight on all the major Raiders pass catching pieces.
I'm drafting
Myers.
I'm drafting the Raiders so much.
I occasionally draft Hunter Renfrow, but don't tell anyone that.
I drafted Hunter Renfrow, and I
occasionally draft Jakobi Myers, who goes 80 picks ahead of Hunter Renfrow.
I don't occasionally draft Jakobi Myers.
When we say occasional, when we say occasionally, does occasionally mean 11%?
Yeah, right. Occasionally is like 3%. 11% is like, no, this guy's like kind of a priority for me.
Because I'm 11% on Hunter Renfrow.
I'm 9% on Hunter Renfrow.
You guys make me sick.
So
someone call 911, I guess.
But yes.
911.
I drafted Hunter Renfrow on a team, and I forgot that was embarrassing because I take him on several teams, and I was just going back and forth with Ben about roster construction stuff, and then I sent him an example of a team that I thought fit this, and he was like, "That is a good team, except you have Hunter Renfrow on it. What the fuck? This guy sucks." And then he sent me a photo of him, and he was like, "This guy looks more washed than me," and I was like, I can't even defend that, but yeah, I think he's a great pick.
Oh man! Yeah. So I think once we get to Jakobi Myers and Hunter Renfrow and Colts cornerback takes
on Jakobi and Hunter Renfrow,
that's probably about a good point. I did want to any last guys that, as you guys have gone through this, your whole summer of Dynasty and doing tons of Dynasty drafts, and anybody that we haven't touched on that could be just a take. You could be way lower on them because of a Dynasty perspective, way higher, just anything that you've kind of gleaned over the course of the summer, kind of again with this Dynasty lens. Jacob, you go ahead.
Well, I'm way higher on the consensus Dynasty community's second best pre-draft running back from the class with Jonathan Taylor, who's fully healthy in an awesome offense and draftable in the 6th and 7th round. And I think you should just keep drafting J.K. Dobbins. I think that the confluence of factors between his contract stuff, his past injuries, and the uncertainty of the Ravens has given us a borderline once in a lifetime opportunity to draft one of the most talented running backs that we'll ever get the chance to see in round 6 and round 7. I'm extraordinarily excited for it.
Talk about the market not reacting to stuff. J.K. Dobbins back at practice, and the market's like, yeah, shut up. I don't care.
Don't care at all.
Why don't you care? I thought you were worried about his health and contract. No, we just don't like him, it turns out. Are you really? Because he
was going in the 5th before this. Why isn't he going in the 5th again?
I truly don't. I will say I've been doing in these slow drafts that I've got going now. I've been doing the thing where I take Lamar and then I'm like, you can get whoever you want in the 5th. You can reach for JSN, then you take Dobbins in the 6th, then you can get Flowers in the 7th, and Dobbins isn't there in the 6th anymore. So I think people are starting to wake up that 5-6 turn drafter is starting to take him. So to me, I'm like, all right, it's time for late 5th Dobbins when I have Lamar, which is what I was doing. I want to say, early July, before like all this stuff popped up.
Yep.
Well, what I was
And
doing
I'm happy to do it again.
Early 5th Dobbins with Tyreek Hill, and that didn't age too well after I started being able to do early 7th Dobbins with Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
But,
that was nice. I'll mention Josh Downs, who early, like when we were first looking at all these prospect profiles, I was getting kind of comfortable with these guys. I know Anthony Miko had Josh Downs like really high in his wide receiver rankings. This is a 3-year prospect who was very productive in college, and at the time was someone that we thought might have a chance to go, in round 1, early round 2, that kind of range. I was never quite as into him because you have size concerns. He's more of a slot guy, but I mean, he did have a truly, like, statistically an awesome receiving profile. He only played 4 games, only had 7 receptions and 119 yards, 3 touchdowns as a rookie, or as a freshman, excuse me. But that was good for a 31% dominator rating. I would say he did not break out as a freshman, but like he flashed. And then 36% as a sophomore, 34% as a junior. Like, that's awesome. You get a guy who immediately is productive. He declares early. He was a day 2 pick, even though he was a 3rd round guy. There was a period post-draft where I thought his ADP was really silly because it was too high. It didn't reflect the fact that he had not been a first-round pick. He had instead, gone to the 3rd, and that's a big difference. And now he's like Anthony Richardson slot receiver. That's a pretty bad archetype. But I talked about Alec Pierce and how he's the kind of guy I'm willing to bet on. He didn't flash that much. He didn't rate particularly well in a lot of the advanced stuff that I look at. I mostly like that he was able to earn starter snaps right away. And he's a second-year player, and he has draft capital behind him. I don't think Michael Pittman is like anything special. I think he's, I know Matt Harmon likes him and likes his route running, but like he doesn't really pop for me and my stuff. He's not terrible, but I don't know what's going to happen here with the Colts receivers. Like, it's possible that someone could, emerge and shake things up a little bit, And I think as a completely free, like, regularly available in the 20th round of DraftKings drafts. So not even 18th round. I mean, you want him in the 18th round underdog every single time you get him now. But if you want to go over to DraftKings and get him the 20th, he's there for you too. And there's no hype, no buzz, but he has locked up the number 3 job. He is the starting slot receiver for the Colts now. Is that worth anything at all? Maybe not. but I mean, we are getting a prospect profile that's actually pretty strong. And someone that there was some real excitement about before this offseason kind of went bad for him in a few key ways. But I don't know. That's a guy where maybe, Jacob, you might have some more thoughts on him from kind of a longer-term perspective. But he was someone that, I know there was some excitement for and now is basically off the radar.
Yeah, I didn't love Downs' profile just because I was just concerned that he'd be pigeonholed as like a low to mid A-dot slot wide receiver. But certainly all that's been priced in. Like, he is like a hashtag good player in terms of what we want from his prospect. He probably looks like an NFL player. He's going to be an NFL starter. And the Colts landing spot's obviously horrendous, but all that's definitely priced in. And especially in best ball, it's a fun play. I do agree with you that he has like route concerns because of Pierce and Pittman, but there's still like a lot of available volume to be consolidated if Downs just comes in and he's really good. He's drawn pretty consistently good reviews at camp. He's definitely going to be starting in week 1. And one thing that I think, like, I even had locked into my brain is I was just like, Colts slot wide receiver, ew, they play all these 2 tight end sets all the time. But like, they do have a new coaching staff. So it's like the Eagles had a much higher rate of 11 personnel than like what we've seen out of some of the Frank Reich Colts era where they would do all these weird tight end committees. And then, that's made me more excited for Jelani Woods because like he might not be subject to the same tight end rotations that Colts tight ends have been subjected to for years. But it also makes me like really excited for Josh Downs. Like, maybe they are a little bit more of a traditional 11 personnel passing team. And at the very least, like, Josh Downs should have a chance to force them to be that if he comes out and he's legitimately good because they need guys there.
I love that. I'm going to toss just a few of my random names that I've been going. So, me and Sam Howell in Washington. I'm not going to get into Sam Howell, but my new favorite flavor is a pass catcher for Sam Howell, and it's Cole Turner, who is their tight end from Nevada. So I just pulled up some of his. He was an interesting prospect. He's huge, and half the time he was splitting out at wide receiver at Nevada, which is partially what kind of had me concerned that those guys don't tend to be good NFL tight ends because more than half of playing tight end is blocking and protections and all that different stuff. But in his final 2 years, 20
Trigger
games.
warning for Greg Dulcich, please. Trigger warning.
Yeah.
Or you
right,
say
exactly. Right. I mean, Dalton Kincaid, Greg Dulcich. It's tough for those guys.
By the way,
if you can't
if
block.
people don't know what Cole Turner looks like, keep Greg Dulcich closely in your mind.
Yes.
By the way, if you didn't believe in karma, me dealing with exactly what happened to Alberto the following year to Greg Dulcich, who I gleefully watched take Alberto's job. It just feels a little like karma. And I'm sorry, Greg. This one's on me.
It is a little bit. I mean, it's like you won a bunch of money and got that take right, and the gods are punishing you. At least
But they're also punishing me.
We let you be. Really
because I've made up pretty good.
Yeah,
so I apologies.
That is true. This is true.
Sorry, guys.
But so Cole Turner is my guy. I like his prospect profile, generally speaking, as a pass catcher. I don't think he's like anything insane, but I mean, 19 touchdowns as a tight end with over 100 catches in your final 2 seasons, 1,200 yards is pretty good, even at Nevada. And the draft capital was not amazing, but this is a second year, and I think that's one of the big things I really like about it is he's been there. So the rookie season as a late round pick tight end probably not going to be a thing. We know that, we understand that narrative.
Right.
But you talk about not being blocked by someone, like he has Logan Thomas in front of him and John Bates behind him. These are the jag of all jags, and Logan Thomas is old and not healthy and hasn't been healthy again all summer. Cole Turner's running with the ones he ran. We'll see in a few hours if he's running with the ones again in week 2, but he got all the snaps with Sam Howell and the starters in week 1 and actually led them in targets. And I'm not saying that, we're kind of buying routes, but like what I like about Washington is Terry McLaurin's good. Jahan Dotson is good. Curtis Samuel is fine, but that's not Devontae Adams. That's not Cooper Kupp. That's not like you're not putting target competition out there that you're like, oh God, yeah, you're just buying, hopefully a handful of targets or whatever. Like if he's actually really good, I think that there's like actual real upside from him back here.
It's a skill thing, but it's also a role thing. Like McLaurin is going to earn targets more inconsistently, partly because of skill, but also because he's like a deep threat more than
right.
I know Adams can get deep and everything, but he does a lot for an offense.
Right.
Where,
and Dotson, I think, is good, but not like a game-changing level talent. So I think that there is a lot of like, it's also the offense is going to be good because those guys are good enough, but they're not so good that this dude can't like really emerge into a meaningful hit. They happen to be on the same team. But like Jordan Reed, right? Sometimes we get that guy that emerges from late that he ends up, he was pretty talented and there was a lot of opportunity available to him. And the offense was actually pretty good. And you get that. And at tight end, man, it's so freaking valuable with how bad all these guys are. And like you get a little, you want to put cherries on top, like Eric Bieniemy, right? They keep talking about Eric Bieniemy offenses feature the tight end, right? It's like, well, he had Travis Kelce, but like we can stack these little things, right? That I am bullish for Eric Bieniemy. I am bullish for Washington and all that. And so I think this is a guy like in BBM. This dude has been undrafted all summer. And if you get Washington starting tight end in the 18th round and he's 10% drafted or whatever, like. I like those other late round tight ends, but like Luke Musgrave is 100% drafted and now he's risen up by 25 picks or whatever. This guy is undrafted with the same upside that Luke Musgrave has, and so I'm kind of looking to a lot of those types of guys. Why do I like Kyrenn Williams? Because of everything we talked about, but also he never gets picked. He's never drafted. So I like those guys.
And then you shouldn't because he's unathletic, dude.
Yeah, he sucks. Don't draft that guy. Draft Zach Evans.
Especially not in DraftKings.
Treylon Burks. I was going to toss Treylon Burks out because I know he's hurt, obviously, but he's really falling. And again, especially on DraftKings, I'm talking like if you want to push it, try and push it. And like I'm talking like pick 125 Treylon Burks on DraftKings.
Wow.
I have accomplished that. You know what I mean? So you want a little backdoor.
That's the Tony Williams corridor.
Yeah. So it just the plummet is crazy. And like if you take a long view, like from a dynasty perspective, like I know he's hurt right now, but like Treylon Burks at pick 125 is truly absurd. And I mean his ADP's past 100. So it's not even like that is something. He's always available after pick 100. And I'm taking advantage. I'm building my teams knowing that I don't need him in week 1, but I want him in week 17. So
I need to actually take some more. What I've done is I took him in the late 6th and then he fell and I mostly sat out the fall. And then I took him a ton in the 8th and now he's going to fall.
And now he's falling again.
And I'm sitting out that fall mostly till he settles. Oh, he's a 10th round price. Cool. I'll come and grab him a bunch in the 10th. And then once he falls again, no, hopefully not.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, that would be the old triple play. The guy we're all excited for falls.
Just wait till round 16 and Beth Ball Resurrection.
Yeah, exactly. He's gonna be going in the 16th round.
Such a big bag.
He's running behind Nick Westbrook, a kind came back from injury, and then the resurrection drops.
And he's gonna have to come up with a new insulting tier name for Treylon Burks.
Yes. The Bateman line is now the Burks line, and that line keeps falling.
You have a
for the
clip
wide
of Treylon Burks or not?
Please,
we never had a clip
no.
of him. No, we never had a clip.
Okay,
No.
keep it that way, please.
No Bateman, no
chance.
Burks, no Dobbins, no clips for any of these guys.
Better not have any clips of Rachaad Bateman
or God. JSN.
I'm trying to think if we have a clip for anyone that was on my team last year, and I don't think a single clip was made for a single one of those players. So there really is something.
It's a fucking conspiracy.
We have power.
Why would they do that?
All right, we got to get out of here. Obviously, make sure and go check out both of these two guys' newsletters and any and all content that they are on. We'll be back. We'll see what this exact these. Let me
say if you've made it this far, I do want to say my legendary running back article will be out later this week. So sign up for the newsletter. It's going to be completely free. That article will be completely free. Sign up for legendaryupside.com. Get the article delivered to your inbox. I'm aiming for Thursday morning.
Nice.
Going 3 hours here didn't help me hit my deadline, but I think I will hit it. And I think I'm going to do a follow-up article on some of the running backs in the dead zone as a commenter called me out on ADP chasing. It is so I can talk more about Breece Hall. That is why I'm doing it. Okay.
Nice.
But I also want to talk about Travis Etienne, and I want to talk about Ramondre Stevenson and some of these other interesting backs in the 4th round this year, which feels a little bit abnormal, but the traditional early round legendary running back article will be out later this week.
Awesome. Jacob?
I'll also say then quick, first of all, I feel a lot less bad for being half an hour late when I still did 2.5 hours of podcasting with you guys. So that
I didn't think this one was going to go that long, but I probably should have thought that through.
I joked around the 90-minute mark that we were halfway done, and we were
correct.
Yeah.
Or I didn't joke. I thought about joking, but my brain is breaking now. I never said it out loud.
Okay. But yeah, if you want to start thinking about thinking, basically Pat has you covered for every single early running back, and then every running back who's going outside of the top 2 rounds, they each get a dedicated place in the Hitchhiker's Guide off-season edition. We are through 12 backfields now, and I'll be writing about at least 10 more, plus a piece on all of the handcuffs of the first 2 running backs. I did the very first one free, and I'm going to be doing the one that I write today free. So it will be a really fun piece talking about these new archetypes of running backs that are dead zone running backs that never used to be, and how I think we should rethink the position in relation to these guys. We'll talk a lot about the Jaguars, the Steelers, Harris especially, the J.K. Dobbins, and the Seattle backs. I'm gonna guess it's gonna be like between 8,000 and 10,000 words. So I do apologize, but you get them all for free because my normal pieces talk about 2 backfields each, and they're about 5,000 words. So I don't think I'm keeping that with 4 backfields.
Well, the positive thing is, we're not taking out too much time from the people between this and all your guys' articles. It's not like they're going to spend hours and hours and hours listening to all this. But when you kind of wrap all this shit up together, Pat's articles, yours, and we basically talked about every relevant running back from round like 8 on this show, you really do kind of have the running back landscape in particular covered. But obviously, if you're watching this, you'll probably have already seen, but we have a Spike Week show Monday night, Tuesday night, and then we're just going to be ripping drafts. I know you guys are also doing tons of drafts, obviously over at Ship Chasing and everything. We're firing drafts like crazy. So be on the lookout for probably a bunch of pre-recorded stuff, Drafters, DraftKings, Underdog, etc. But for the three of us, and of course, long lost friend Davis Mattek, now long lost on this show. We'll see you guys next week. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.